Go eat in your room.
My son, Ryan Palmer, looked at me across my own Christmas dinner table and said, "Mom, you should eat in your room tonight. You're making everyone uncomfortable." For a second, nobody breathed. His wife, Madison, pressed her lips together like she was trying not to smile. My granddaughter, Grace, whispered, "Dad, stop," but Ryan didn't even look at her. I was 68 years old, standing in the house I paid for holding a dish I had cooked since Ryan was a little boy, and my own son had just dismissed me like hired help. So I didn't argue. I walked upstairs, closed my bedroom door, opened my laptop, and canceled every credit card he had been using in my name. But Ryan didn't know the cards were only the beginning. If you've ever been hurt by someone you sacrificed everything for, please like this video and subscribe. Tell me in the comments what you would have done in my place, and let me know where you're watching from and what time it is there. Before my son told me to eat in my room like I was some embarrassing old woman he needed to hide, I used to believe that house was the safest place in my life. I was wrong. My name is Courtney Palmer. I was 68 years old, widowed, and living in a quiet suburb outside Charlotte, North Carolina, in a brick house with white shutters, a wide porch, and a front yard my late husband Thomas used to treat like sacred ground. That house was not handed to me. It was not inherited. It was not bought with my son's money, no matter how Ryan liked to act when people came over. Thomas and I paid for every inch of it. We bought it when Ryan was still small enough to fall asleep on the couch with cookie crumbs on his shirt. Back then, the kitchen floor was cracked, the upstairs bathroom leaked, and the backyard looked like a field nobody had loved in years. But Thomas stood in the doorway the first day we got the keys and said, "Courtney, this is where our family starts breathing." I believed him. For years, that house held everything. Birthday cakes, school projects, Christmas mornings, arguments, forgiveness. Thomas dancing with me in the kitchen while pasta boiled over, because neither of us wanted to let go. Then cancer took Thomas. And suddenly, the house got quiet in a way I cannot explain, unless you have lost someone whose footsteps you knew better than your own heartbeat. After the funeral, everyone told me to rest. But bills do not rest. Employees do not rest. A company does not survive on sympathy. Thomas and I had built Palmer Medical Supply together from almost nothing. We started with one rented office, 2 folding chairs, and a phone that rang mostly with people telling us no. We supplied equipment to clinics, nursing homes, and small practices that the bigger companies ignored. Thomas was the face people remembered. I was the woman behind the desk, making sure the checks cleared, the orders shipped, the contracts were correct, and nobody took advantage of us. After he died, some men in suits assumed I would sell. One even patted my hand across a conference table and said, "At your age, Courtney, you should enjoy your peace." I smiled at him. Then I kept the company. I learned every account Thomas had handled. I renegotiated contracts. I fired a supplier who thought a widow would not notice inflated prices. I worked 10-hour days with grief sitting beside me like an unwanted guest. And I did it because of Ryan, my only child, my son. The boy I had loved so hard that somewhere along the way, I mistook giving for parenting. Ryan Palmer was charming. That was always his gift and his danger. He had his father's height, his father's smile, and none of his father's humility. People trusted Ryan quickly because he knew how to sound grateful before asking for something. When he was younger, I made excuses. He was grieving his father. He was finding himself. He was under pressure. He just needed one more chance. One more loan. One more rescue. One more door opened by his mother's name. By the time Ryan was in his 40s, he had learned something I never meant to teach him. If he waited long enough, cried hard enough, or acted offended enough, I would fix whatever he broke. Then he married Madison. Madison Palmer was the kind of woman who smiled with her mouth while measuring your worth with her eyes. She was polished, fashionable, and always just polite enough that if you complained, you sounded unreasonable. The first time she came to Sunday dinner, she walked through my home, slowly touching the back of my sofa, glancing at the curtains, looking up at the chandelier. "It has so much potential," she said. "Not warmth, not history. Potential." I should have heard the warning in that word. 2 years before that Christmas dinner, Ryan called me sounding desperate. "Mom, we need help," he said. Those 4 words still had power over me. He told me their lease was ending. He said the rent was ridiculous. He said Grace needed stability. He said they would only stay with me for a few months while they got back on track. Madison got on the phone too. "We hate to impose, Courtney," she said in that soft voice of hers. "But family is family, right?" I looked across the room at a framed photo of Thomas holding baby Ryan in the hospital. And I said, yes. That was the mistake that opened the door. At first, they brought suitcases, then boxes, then furniture, then opinions. Madison started small. A throw pillow here, a lamp there. Then one morning, I came downstairs and found my living room curtains gone. My curtains. The blue ones Thomas had picked because he said they made the room feel like spring. Madison was standing on a chair hanging gray linen panels. "Oh, good, you're awake," she said. "These brighten the room so much more." "They were my curtains," I said. She laughed lightly like I had made a joke. "Courtney, they were very sweet, just a little dated." Ryan came in behind her with a coffee mug in his hand. "Mom, don't make it a thing," he said. "Madison's just trying to help." That became his favorite sentence. Don't make it a thing. When my china cabinet was moved to the garage, I was told not to make it a thing. When Madison replaced my Christmas wreath with one she ordered online, I was told not to make it a thing. When Ryan started calling my home our place in front of guests, I was told not to make it a thing. Every insult came wrapped in the same message. Be quiet, Mom. Be grateful, Mom. Step aside, Mom. The worst came 6 months after they moved in. Madison wanted the primary bedroom. She did not ask. She presented it like a household improvement plan. "Courtney," she said, standing in my hallway with her arms folded, "Ryan and I really need more space. And honestly, that back room would be perfect for you. Quieter. More private." I stared at her. That bedroom was where Thomas had spent his last night at home before the hospital. It was where I still kept his watch in the top drawer. It was where I had cried into his pillow when the grief got too heavy to carry standing up. Ryan knew that. He stood right beside her and said nothing. Then Madison added, "You don't need a room that big all by yourself." All by yourself. As if widowhood was a reason to be downsized. I looked at Ryan, waiting for him to say, "No, Madison. That's my mother's room?" He looked at the floor. "Mom," he said finally, it would just make things easier. For whom? That was what I wanted to ask. But Grace was watching from the stairs, pale and silent, and I could see the fear in her face. She hated conflict. She hated the way her parents could turn a room cold. So I swallowed the words. I moved into the back bedroom. That was the day my house stopped feeling like mine. After that, Madison became the queen of rooms she'd never paid for. She hosted brunches in my dining room. She rearranged my kitchen drawers. She corrected me when I put groceries in the wrong cabinet. Ryan began acting like a man doing me a favor by letting me stay. If I watched television in the living room, he would say Mom Madison's friends are coming over. Could you maybe relax upstairs? If I cooked something he did not like, he would sigh and order takeout on one of the cards I had given him for business expenses. If I questioned a bill, he would kiss my cheek and say, "You worry too much." But I was starting to worry for a reason, because the bills were getting larger. The respect was getting smaller. And my son's eyes no longer softened when he looked at me. Only Grace still saw me. My sweet Grace. She was 16, quiet, observant, and kinder than that house deserved. She would knock on my bedroom door at night and bring me tea. Sometimes she sat on the edge of my bed and whispered, "Grandma, I'm sorry." I always told her she had nothing to be sorry for. But she did. Not because she had done anything wrong, because children should never have to watch adults erase someone they love. By the time Christmas came, Ryan and Madison had been living in my home for almost 2 years. 2 years of temporary. 2 years of my money covering the mortgage-free house, the utilities, the groceries, the repairs, the insurance, the landscaping, and half the lifestyle Madison liked to show off. And still, somehow, I was treated like the burden. Madison planned Christmas dinner like she was hosting royalty. She ordered flowers, hired a catering assistant, sent invitations, chose matching napkins, told guests to arrive at 6 sharp. Not once did she ask if I wanted to host Christmas in my own home. She simply announced it. "Courtney, I'll need you to make your sweet potato casserole and the cranberry dressing," she said. People love traditional things from older generations. Older generations. I looked at her, waiting to see if she heard herself. She did not. Ryan walked in adjusting his watch and said, "Mom, just go along with Madison's plan. She wants everything perfect." Perfect. That word followed me all week. Perfect table, perfect tree, perfect family. Except there was one thing Madison could not make perfect. Me? I was the reminder that the house had a real owner. A real history. A woman behind every polished surface Madison wanted credit for. And I think that bothered her more than she ever admitted. On Christmas morning, I woke before sunrise and sat alone in the back bedroom that used to hold storage boxes. Downstairs, I could hear Madison moving through my kitchen, opening my cabinets, giving instructions like she had been born there. I looked at Thomas's old watch on my dresser. Then I looked at the small stack of bank statements hidden beneath my Bible. Ryan thought I knew nothing. Madison thought I was too tired to fight. They both thought kindness meant weakness. But that Christmas, before the first guest even arrived, I felt something inside me shift. Not anger, not yet. Something colder, clearer. For the first time in years, I stopped asking myself how to keep the peace. I started asking why peace always required me to disappear. And by nightfall, Ryan would give me the answer in front of everyone. I used to tell myself Ryan became selfish after Thomas died. That was the version of the story that hurt less. It was easier to blame grief than to admit the truth my son had learned to take because I had taught him I would always give. When Ryan was 13, the year we buried his father, he stopped sleeping through the night. I would find him in the kitchen at 2 a.m, sitting in the dark with a glass of milk untouched in front of him. "I keep thinking Dad's going to walk in," he told me once. I sat beside him and pulled him against my shoulder. He was already getting tall, all elbows in sadness, but in that moment, he felt like my little boy again. "I know, baby," I whispered. "I know." That was when I made my first mistake. I promised myself Ryan would never feel another loss if I could prevent it. No child should lose a father that young. I still believe that. But pain does not excuse everything that comes after it. I did not understand that then, so I softened every consequence. When Ryan failed 2 classes in high school because he skipped assignments, I hired tutors and wrote emails to teachers asking for extra chances. When he wrecked his first car, I told myself boys made mistakes and helped him get another one. When he dropped out of college for a semester because he needed to clear his head, I paid the apartment lease he had signed without telling me. Every time Ryan fell, I rushed in so fast, he never learned how hard the ground was. People praised me for being devoted. They did not see what devotion was costing us both. By the time Ryan was 25, he had a habit of calling me only when something was wrong. Mom, I'm short this month. Mom, the insurance payment hit early. Mom, I swear I'll pay you back. And I always helped. Sometimes I sent money before he finished explaining. Sometimes I paid bills directly, so he would not feel embarrassed. Sometimes I lied to myself and called it support when it was really rescue. Thomas would not have allowed it. That thought visited me often. Thomas had loved Ryan deeply, but he had a backbone made of steel. He believed love needed rules. He believed a man should be able to stand on his own feet before asking anyone else to carry him. Once when Ryan was 11, he broke a neighbor's window playing baseball after Thomas had told him not to swing near the driveway. Ryan cried and begged Thomas not to make him apologize. Thomas walked him across the street anyway. Later, Ryan sulked in his room, and I told Thomas maybe he had been too hard on him. Thomas looked at me and said, "Courtney, if we protect him from shame, now life will humiliate him later." I wish I had remembered that better. After Thomas died, I became both parents, but I kept only the gentle half. Ryan learned that my guilt was a door, and he learned how to open it. When he was 30, I gave him a job at Palmer Medical Supply. Not because he had earned it, because he was my son. I told myself it would give him structure. I told the staff he was learning the business from the ground up. I told Ryan this was a chance to honor his father's legacy. He nodded with tears in his eyes. "I won't let you down, Mom," he said. For a while, I believed him. Ryan was good with clients. He could charm office managers, shake hands with doctors, make small clinics feel important. People liked him. They still do at first. But behind the scenes, he was careless. He missed meetings, forgot follow-up calls, submitted expense reports late, took long lunches, and called them networking. When employees complained, I smoothed it over. "He's still learning," I said. He was not learning. He was watching how much I would cover. Then Madison entered his life, and whatever humility Ryan had left began to disappear. Madison liked success, but she liked the appearance of success even more. She wanted the right car in the driveway, the right handbag on her arm, the right restaurants on her social media, the right family photo in front of the right Christmas tree. At first, she treated me like a blessing. "Courtney, you are such a generous mother," she would say, touching my hand across the table. But after the wedding, her compliments changed shape. "You've done so much for Ryan," she said one afternoon. "I just hope he gets to enjoy what his father built someday." His father, not his parents, not Thomas and me. I corrected her gently. Thomas and I built it together. Madison smiled. "Of course. That's what I meant." But it was not what she meant. She had a way of making my life sound like something Ryan was waiting to inherit. When she became pregnant with Grace, I thought motherhood might soften her. Instead, it gave her another reason to ask for more. The baby needs stability. Ryan needs a better car if he's meeting clients. We should be thinking about the family image. Family image became the excuse for everything. A luxury SUV Ryan could not afford. A private preschool Grace did not need, but Madison wanted to mention at brunch. Vacations charged as client development. Dinner bills Ryan said were for business, though I later learned some of those dinners had nothing to do with business at all. And through it all, I kept helping, because Grace was there. That sweet little girl with serious eyes and tiny hands that clung to mine whenever Ryan and Madison argued. I could say no to Ryan in theory, But when Grace needed school supplies, dance shoes, summer camp medical bills, a laptop, I opened my checkbook. Ryan knew that too. He learned to put Grace's name in every request. Mom, it's for Grace. Mom, we don't want Grace to feel different from other kids. Mom, you know Dad would want Grace taken care of. That last one always worked. Using Thomas's memory against me was cruel, but Ryan did it so smoothly, I sometimes did not notice until later, when I was alone and the house was quiet. Madison noticed everything. She watched me pay. She watched Ryan ask. She watched my face soften whenever Grace entered the room, and she began planting little seeds. Courtney, you really shouldn't stress over finances at your age. Ryan understands the modern business world better. You deserve to relax and let the next generation step up. Step up. That was how she described taking over things she had never earned. One evening, about a year before that Christmas dinner, I overheard Madison speaking to Ryan in the kitchen. They thought I was upstairs. She still treats you like a child, Madison said. Ryan sighed. She's protective. No, Madison replied. She's controlling. Your father built that company for you, and she's holding it over your head. My hand froze on the banister. Ryan did not correct her. He did not say, my mother built it too. He did not say, she kept it alive after Dad died. He said, I know. 2 words. I know. They cut deeper than any insult Madison had ever thrown at me. That was the night I began to see my son clearly. Not all at once. A mother's heart resists the truth when the truth wears her child's face. But a crack opened. After that, I noticed more. Ryan stopped asking and started assuming. He assumed I would pay for repairs on his car. He assumed I would cover Grace's tuition. He assumed the company card in his wallet was his to use. He assumed the house would be his one day, so he might as well start acting like it. And Madison fed that assumption every chance she got. Your mother doesn't need all this space. Your mother doesn't need to be involved in every decision. Your mother should be grateful she has family around. Grateful. Imagine being told to feel grateful while people slowly take over the life you built. Still, I stayed quiet too often. I told myself Ryan was stressed. I told myself Madison was insecure. I told myself Grace needed peace. But peace built on disrespect is not peace. It is surrender with prettier lighting. Grace was the only one who made me feel human in that house. She noticed when I stopped eating dinner with them. She noticed when Madison interrupted me. She noticed when Ryan walked past my bedroom without saying goodnight. Once she found me in the laundry room holding one of Thomas's old flannel shirts I had pulled from a storage box. Grandma, she asked softly. Are you okay? I folded the shirt quickly. I'm fine, sweetheart. She looked at me the way children look when they know adults are lying, but do not want to embarrass them. Then she said, Dad wasn't always like this, was he? I could not answer right away, because the truth was complicated. Ryan had been sweet once. He had brought me dandelions from the yard. He had cried when Thomas went into the hospital. He had held my hand at the funeral so tightly, my fingers hurt. But somewhere between grief and privilege, between my guilt and his entitlement, my son had changed. Or maybe he had simply grown into the parts of himself I refused to discipline. No, I said finally. He wasn't always like this. Grace looked down. Mom says everything here will be Dad's someday. My stomach tightened. Does she? Grace nodded. She says you're just not ready to let go. I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Madison had mistaken my patience for weakness. Ryan had mistaken my love for permission. And both of them had forgotten one important thing. Nothing in that house belonged to them. Not the deed, Not the company, not the accounts, not the credit cards. They were living on my kindness and calling it inheritance. That realization did not make me angry at first. It made me ashamed. Ashamed that I had allowed my son to become a man who could look at his own mother and see an obstacle. Ashamed that Grace had to witness it. Ashamed that Thomas's legacy was being twisted into Ryan's entitlement. But shame, if you sit with it long enough, can turn into clarity. By the time Madison started planning that Christmas dinner, I already knew something was wrong. I had seen enough charges, heard enough whispers, felt enough coldness at my own table. I just had not decided what to do about it. Not yet, because part of me was still waiting for Ryan to remember who I was. His mother. The woman who stayed. The woman who paid. The woman who built the floor beneath his feet. But on Christmas night, when he told me to eat in my room, I finally understood. Ryan remembered exactly who I was. He just thought I would never remember my own worth. The credit cards were never Ryan's. That was the part he forgot. Or maybe he never forgot. Maybe he simply believed I would be too weak, too guilty, too motherly to ever remind him. Years before that Christmas dinner, I had given Ryan access to a few business accounts because I wanted him to grow into responsibility. Palmer Medical Supply required travel client lunches equipment, purchases, emergency deliveries, and vendor deposits. At least that was the reason I told myself. The truth was uglier. I wanted to trust my son so badly that I kept handing him proof he could not be trusted. The first card was simple. A company card with a modest limit. For business expenses only, I told him. Ryan held it between two fingers and smiled like I had handed him a key to manhood. "Of course, Mom," he said. "I know what I'm doing." That sentence should have scared me. Because Ryan always sounded most confident right before he made a mess. At first, the charges looked normal. Gas, office supplies, lunch with a clinic manager, a hotel near Raleigh for a medical equipment conference. Nothing that made my stomach twist. Then the numbers started changing. A dinner for two at a steakhouse in Atlanta, a weekend resort charge in Asheville, designer sunglasses, a luxury watch repair, a $500 wine bar bill listed as client entertainment. When I asked Ryan about it, he barely looked up from his phone. Networking mom. Networking at a wine bar. He sighed like I was embarrassing him. That's how business works now. You can't expect me to build relationships over coffee in a hospital cafeteria. Madison was sitting at the kitchen island that day, scrolling through her phone. She did not even lift her head before adding, "Ryan is trying to modernize the company, Courtney. You have to let him breathe. Let him breathe." That was what they called spending my money. I wanted to argue, but Ryan looked tired, and Madison looked annoyed, and Grace was at the table doing homework with her shoulders tense. So I let the conversation die. That became the pattern. I would question a charge. Ryan would act insulted. Madison would make me feel outdated. Grace would shrink into silence, and I would back down. But backing down does not erase numbers. Numbers sit quietly and wait. By the fall before that Christmas, the statements had become impossible to ignore. There were flights I had never approved. Hotel rooms in cities where we had no clients. Restaurant charges on nights Ryan told me he was working late at the office. Online purchases delivered to addresses I did not recognize. One charge stopped me cold. A jewelry store in Atlanta. $3,850. I sat at my desk in the small back bedroom staring at that line until the words blurred. Madison's birthday was not near. Their anniversary had already passed. Christmas was still weeks away. I told myself there could be an explanation. A gift for a client's wife. A company raffle. Something. Anything. Mothers can be very creative when denial is protecting them from heartbreak. I called Ryan. He answered on the fourth ring, irritated. Yeah, Mom, Ryan, I'm looking at the business card statement. A pause. Then, okay, there's a jewelry purchase from Atlanta. Another pause. Shorter this time. That was for a client. What client, Mom? I don't have every detail in front of me. You spent nearly $4,000. He laughed, but it was not a warm laugh. You want me to grow the company, but you panic every time I spend money. I want you to explain what you spend, and I will. Later. I'm in the middle of something. He hung up before I could answer. I sat there holding the phone, feeling foolish. Not because I had questioned him, because I had waited so long. That evening, Madison came into the kitchen wearing a cream sweater and a diamond bracelet I'd never seen before. My eyes went to her wrist. She noticed. Oh, she said, lifting her arm. Do you like it? Ryan surprised me. My chest tightened. Ryan bought that for you. She smiled. Isn't he sweet? For 1 second, relief washed through me. Maybe the jewelry charge had been for Madison after all. Maybe I had been wrong. Then Madison added, he got it months ago, actually. I just forgot to wear it. Months ago. The Atlanta charge was from last week. I turned back to the sink so she would not see my face. That night, I did something I should have done long before. I opened every statement, not just the current month. All of them. I printed pages until the machine in my room grew hot. I highlighted charges. I made notes in the margins. I compared dates with Ryan's calendar. I checked company appointments. I searched vendor names. I matched receipts against expense reports. And slowly, a picture formed. Ryan was not just careless. He was hiding things. The charges told a story he had not meant for me to read. Atlanta appeared too often. Same neighborhood, same restaurants, same boutique hotel, same parking garage. Then finally, a recurring payment under a property management company I did not recognize. I called the number listed beside the charge the next morning. A woman answered cheerfully. Magnolia Square Residences. How may I help you, Residences? Not hotel, not conference center. Residences. I hung up without speaking. My hands were shaking so badly I had to sit down. Ryan had an apartment in Atlanta, paid through an account tied to my business. For several minutes, I could not move. I could hear Madison downstairs laughing on the phone. I could hear Grace's music faintly through the wall. I could hear the heating system click on and push warm air into a room that suddenly felt freezing. I wanted to march downstairs and confront him. I wanted to throw the statements in his face. I wanted to ask Madison if she knew her husband had a secret apartment 2 states away. But anger is loud, and I had spent too many years being trained to keep quiet. So instead, I called Eleanor Whitaker. Eleanor had been my attorney for almost 15 years. She was not warm in the way people expect older women to be warm. She was sharp, precise, and calm enough to make a hurricane feel poorly organized. When she answered, I said, I think Ryan is misusing company funds. She did not gasp. She did not ask if I was sure. She simply said, bring me everything. 2 days later, I sat in her office with a folder thick enough to make my wrist ache. Eleanor read in silence. That was one of the things I respected about her. She did not fill pain with useless words. After 20 minutes, she removed her glasses and looked at me. Courtney, this is not just poor judgment. My throat tightened. What is it? It may be misappropriation of company funds. At minimum, it is serious misuse of authorized access. Authorized access. That phrase hurt more than I expected. Because I had authorized it. I had given him the cards, the accounts, the trust, the benefit of every doubt. Eleanor leaned forward. First step, you revoke access. I looked down at my hands. He's my son. I know. It will destroy him. No, she said firmly. It will stop him. I looked up. Eleanor's face softened, but only slightly. Courtney, there is a difference between helping your child and allowing your child to financially exploit you. The word exploit landed like a slap. I wanted to reject it. I wanted to say Ryan would never exploit me. Ryan was spoiled. Ryan was selfish. Ryan was irresponsible. But exploit, that sounded too cruel. Then I thought of the Atlanta apartment, the jewelry, the lies, the way he let Madison treat my home like a showroom and me like a leftover piece of furniture. What if he gets angry? I asked. Eleanor closed the folder. He probably will. What if he says I'm confused? Her eyes sharpened. Has he said that before? I hesitated. Not directly. But Madison had. Little comments, little smiles. Courtney forgets things sometimes. Courtney gets overwhelmed by paperwork. Courtney doesn't understand how business works now. I had brushed them off because they sounded small. Suddenly, they did not feel small at all. Eleanor noticed my silence. Do not sign anything Ryan or Madison gives you, she said. Do not discuss your estate plans with them. Do not give them additional access. And keep documenting. Documenting everything. Statements, emails, texts, conversations, if you can summarize them afterward. Dates matter. I nodded, but inside I felt sick. This was my son we were talking about. The child I had rocked through fevers. The boy who used to leave sticky fingerprints on my refrigerator. The man who now had a secret apartment funded by accounts connected to the company his father and I built. On the drive home, I passed Christmas lights strung across storefronts. Families walked in and out of shops carrying gift bags. A little boy in a red coat pressed his face against a bakery window, and his mother laughed as she pulled him back. I had to pull into a parking lot because I started crying so hard I could not see the road. Not loud crying, the quiet kind. The kind that makes your whole body feel old. I cried because I missed Thomas. I cried because I missed the Ryan I thought I had raised. And I cried because some part of me knew Eleanor was right. When I got home, Madison was in the foyer arranging garland around the staircase. There you are, she said. Ryan was looking for you. My heart jumped. Why? She smiled without looking at me. He needs you to approve something for the Christmas dinner. Of course he did. Not to ask how I was. Not to see why my eyes were red. To approve something. To pay for something. To make something easier for him. That night, Ryan came to my room with his laptop open. Mom, the catering deposit is higher than expected, he said. I'm just going to put it on the business card and categorize it as client hospitality. Some partners will be there anyway. I stared at him. Christmas dinner? In my house? For his image? Charged to my company? No, I said. Ryan blinked. It was such a small word, but in that room it sounded like a door locking. What do you mean? No, I mean, no, Ryan. Christmas dinner is not a business expense. His face changed, not dramatically, just enough. The softness left. Mom, don't start this. There it was again. The warning, the reminder of my role. Be easy, be quiet, be useful. I looked at my son and realized he was not asking permission. He was testing how much control he still had. And because I was not ready for the war that would follow, I did not cancel the cards that night. But I did something else. After he left, I opened my laptop. I changed passwords. I downloaded statements. I emailed Eleanor. And I wrote one sentence in a notebook I kept beside my bed. If Ryan humiliates me one more time, I will stop protecting him from the truth. I did not know then that the final humiliation would come at Christmas dinner. In front of everyone. But the cards were already waiting. So was I. Madison announced Christmas dinner like she was announcing a royal event. Not asking. Announcing. I was standing at the kitchen sink rinsing coffee cups when she walked in with a leather planner tucked under her arm and her phone in her hand. "Courtney," she said, "we're hosting Christmas dinner here this year." I turned off the faucet slowly. "We are." She smiled, but her eyes stayed flat. "Yes. Ryan and I talked about it. It makes the most sense. The house is spacious, the dining room photographs beautifully, and it will be good for Ryan to have a few business connections here in a warmer setting." There it was, the house. Not your house. The dining room, not your dining room. I dried my hands on a towel and looked past her into the hallway where Ryan was pretending not to listen. "How many people?" I asked. Madison opened her planner. 22, maybe 24 if the McAllisters confirm. 24 people. "It's Christmas, Courtney." She gave a little laugh. "People gather. I wanted to say people also ask the homeowner before inviting half the county into her house." But Ryan stepped into the kitchen, then wearing that impatient expression I had come to know too well. "Mom, don't make this difficult," he said. "Madison's been working hard on this. Working hard. In my kitchen. With my money. For his image." I looked at him, waiting for even one sentence that sounded like respect. "Maybe is that okay with you?" "Mom, maybe we should have asked first. Maybe this is still your home." Nothing. Madison tapped her pen against the planner. "I'll need you to make your sweet potato casserole," she said. "And the cranberry dressing?" People love those older family recipes. Older. She always found a way to make traditions sound like decay. "My recipes were good enough when Ryan was little," I said. Ryan sighed. "Nobody said they weren't." Madison's smile tightened. "Of course not. It's just that I'm handling the presentation this year. I want everything cohesive." Cohesive meant my red table runner would disappear. Cohesive meant my handmade ornaments would stay boxed in the garage. Cohesive meant Madison would strip every piece of memory from Christmas and replace it with silver ribbon and white candles. That afternoon, boxes started arriving. Garland, napkin rings, charger plates, crystal candle holders, gold-rimmed place cards. A centerpiece so large it looked like it belonged in a hotel lobby. Every delivery came to my door. Every receipt I suspected came from Ryan's card. My card. The next day, I found Madison in the dining room measuring the table. Grace was beside her, holding a stack of folded napkins, looking miserable. "Grandma," she said softly when she saw me. Madison did not look up. "Grace, don't wrinkle those." Grace lowered her eyes. I walked into the room and saw place cards spread across the table. Ryan Palmer, Madison Palmer, Grace Palmer, Douglas McAllister, Elaine McAllister. Several names I recognized from Ryan's business circle. A few neighbors. Madison's friends. I scanned the table once. Then again. My name was not there. At first I thought I had missed it. Maybe it was near the end. Maybe Madison had not finished. I touched one of the cards. "Where am I sitting?" Madison froze for half a second. "Only half." Then she resumed arranging the napkins. "Oh, we're still figuring that out?" Grace looked up quickly. Too quickly. She knew. Children always know the truth before adults admit it. "Figuring it out?" I asked. Madison's voice became syrupy. "Courtney, don't worry about details. You'll be comfortable." Comfortable. That word had followed me from my bedroom to my own dining room like a curse. The smaller room would be comfortable. Resting upstairs would be comfortable. Being out of sight would be comfortable. I looked at Grace. Her cheeks were pink with shame. "Grandma can sit by me," she said. Madison's head snapped toward her. "Grace?" "It's Christmas," Grace said, her voice trembling. "She should sit with us." Madison stared at her daughter with a warning so sharp I felt it from across the table. Then Ryan walked in. "What's going on?" Grace pressed her lips together. "I said I asked where I'm sitting." Ryan rubbed his forehead like I had created a crisis. "Mom, Madison has a seating plan. I live here. No one said you don't. You invited 24 people into my house, and I don't have a place card." Madison laughed softly. "Courtney, please. You're making it sound cruel." "Is it not?" The room went quiet. Ryan's eyes hardened. "Mom," he said in a low voice, not in front of Grace. That was another trick he used. When he wanted to silence me, he made my pain sound inappropriate. I looked at my granddaughter. She was staring at the napkins in her hands like they might save her. So I swallowed it. Again. But something inside me did not go back down as easily as before. That evening, I went to the garage to find my old Christmas serving dishes. The garage was cold crowded with the pieces of my life Madison had declared outdated. My china cabinet stood against the wall under a plastic sheet. Boxes labeled Courtney Old Decor were stacked beside it. Courtney Old Decor. Not Christmas ornaments. Not family keepsakes. Not memories. Old decor. I pulled open one box and found the ornaments Thomas and Ryan had made together when Ryan was 7. Little wooden stars with uneven paint. A paper angel with glitter wings. A cracked red ball that had survived 30 Christmases. Madison had replaced them with glass ornaments in matching shades of champagne. I sat on an overturned storage bin holding that paper angel, and for a moment I felt so tired I could barely breathe. Then Grace appeared in the doorway. "I'm sorry," she whispered. I wiped my eyes quickly. "You don't have to keep apologizing for adults." She came and sat beside me. "Mom says Christmas needs to look elegant this year because Dad invited important people." "Important people," I repeated. Grace nodded. "She said Dad needs to look successful." I looked toward the house. Ryan needed to look successful. That was the whole dinner. Not family, not gratitude, not Christmas. A stage. And I was the one person Madison did not want in the spotlight, because I was the truth standing in sensible shoes. Grace picked up the paper angel. "Did Dad make this?" "He did," I said. "Your grandfather helped him." She smiled sadly. "It's better than the glass ones." I touched her hand. "Don't let anyone teach you that expensive things are the same as meaningful things." Her eyes filled with tears. "I hate how they treat you." That nearly broke me. Not because she said it, because she had seen it. I had spent years trying to hide the disrespect under soft words and closed doors, but Grace had watched the whole thing unfold. "I'm okay," I lied. "No, you're not," she whispered. For a second, she sounded older than 16. Then we heard Madison calling from inside. "Grace, I need you." Grace flinched. I hated that. I hated that my granddaughter had learned to flinch at her mother's voice. She stood still, holding the angel. "Can I put this on the tree?" she asked. Before I could answer, Madison appeared behind her. "What is that?" Grace turned. An ornament Dad made when he was little. Madison's expression barely changed, but her voice cooled. "Sweetheart, that doesn't match the theme." "It's family," Grace said. "It's clutter," Madison replied. The word hit me harder than I expected. Grace looked at me, then at the ornament. Ryan came into the garage behind Madison, checking his phone. "What's taking so long?" Grace held up the angel. "Dad, you made this with Grandpa? Can we put it on the tree?" Ryan glanced at it. For one brief second, I saw recognition. Then Madison looked at him, and he shrugged. "Maybe next year, Gracie. Your mom already has everything set." "Maybe next year." That was how people postponed respect until it died. Grace slowly placed the angel back in the box. I did not say anything, but I remembered. I remembered Ryan choosing Madison's theme over his father's memory. I remembered my name missing from the table. I remembered the way he looked at me like my hurt was an inconvenience. Christmas Eve came with freezing rain tapping against the windows. Madison moved through the house like a general preparing for inspection. She corrected the caterer, adjusted candles, replaced my kitchen towels with white linen ones no one was allowed to use. She handed me an apron. Not one of mine. A plain black one. "Would you mind wearing this while you're cooking?" she asked. "It keeps everything neat." I stared at it. It looked like something staff would wear. Ryan was standing nearby. He saw my face. He saw the apron. And still, he said, "Mom, just help Madison out. Tonight matters. Tonight matters." As if I had not mattered for 68 years. As if my house, my labor, my recipes, my money, my memories, and my silence were only valuable if they helped Ryan look impressive. I took the apron. Not because I accepted it, because by then I had stopped reacting in the moment. I was watching, listening, collecting. Every insult was becoming evidence, not for a court yet, for myself. By 5:30, the house smelled like roasted turkey cinnamon butter and betrayal. Guests began arriving with bottles of wine and bright voices. Madison greeted them at the door like the lady of the house. Ryan stood beside her, one hand on her back, smiling like a man who owned everything around him. And I stood in the kitchen, wearing that black apron, stirring cranberry dressing, while strangers praised my home without knowing it was mine. Then I heard Madison laugh from the foyer. "Oh, thank you. We've worked so hard to make this place feel like us. Like us." I closed my eyes. My hand tightened around the spoon, and somewhere deep inside me, the last thread of patience began to snap. By 6 o'clock, my house no longer sounded like my house. It sounded like Madison's performance. Laughter floated through the foyer. Wine glasses clicked. Men in expensive jackets praised Ryan's beautiful home, and women leaned close to Madison, asking where she had found the centerpiece, the candles, the silver napkin rings. Every time someone complimented the house, Madison smiled like she had built the walls herself. "Thank you," she said again and again. "We've put so much work into it. That word kept hitting me in the chest. I was in the kitchen, still wearing the black apron she had handed me, pulling my sweet potato casserole from the oven. The heat flushed my face. My hands ached. My back throbbed from standing all day. No one asked if I needed to sit down. No one asked if I had eaten. Grace slipped into the kitchen and took one look at me. Grandma let me help. Before I could answer, Madison appeared behind her. "Grace sweetheart guests are in the dining room. Don't hide in here." "I'm not hiding," Grace said. "Grandma needs help." Madison's eyes flicked toward me, then the casserole. "Courtney is fine. She knows what she's doing." Courtney, not Mom, not Grandma. Not even Mrs. Palmer in front of guests. Just Courtney, like I was hired help she was trying to manage politely. Grace ignored her and reached for the serving spoon. Madison's voice sharpened. "Grace?" The poor girl froze. I forced a smile. "Go on, sweetheart. I've got it." Grace looked like she wanted to argue, but she knew what would happen if she did. She left slowly, glancing back at me from the doorway. Madison stepped closer. "Please don't make Grace feel responsible for you tonight," she said quietly. I stared at her. For me, she's sensitive. When you look upset, it affects her. There it was again. My pain was the problem, not their cruelty, not the missing chair, not the apron, my face, my presence, my refusal to disappear cheerfully enough. I set the casserole on the counter. "Madison, where exactly am I sitting?" She blinked as if the question bored her. "We'll figure it out." Dinner is being served now. She glanced toward the dining room. Courtney, please don't start. I almost laughed. Those 3 words had become the family anthem. Don't start. Don't speak. Don't make it uncomfortable. Don't remind us you exist. Before I could answer, Ryan walked in. He looked polished and pleased with himself, wearing a navy blazer I was almost certain had been paid for with one of the cards I had given him. His cheeks were flushed from wine, and his smile vanished the moment he saw my expression. "What's wrong now?" he asked. Now, as if my hurt had been interrupting him all evening. I wiped my hands on the apron. I asked where I'm sitting. Ryan looked at Madison. Madison gave the smallest shrug. That shrug told me everything. They had discussed it. They had planned it. They had simply hoped I would be too embarrassed to ask. Ryan lowered his voice. "Mom, the table is full. The table seats 24. We have 24 guests. I am not a guest, Ryan." His jaw tightened. From the dining room, someone called, "Ryan, this wine is fantastic." Ryan turned his head and smiled automatically. "Be right there." Then he looked back at me, and the smile died. "Mom, can we not do this tonight?" "Do what?" "Create drama." I felt something inside me go still. Wanting a seat at Christmas dinner is creating drama. Madison stepped in, her voice soft and poisonous. "Courtney, nobody is excluding you. We just thought you might be more comfortable resting in your room. It's been a long day for you. Resting. In my room. While strangers ate my food at my table in my house." I looked at Ryan. He did not look ashamed. He looked annoyed. That was the moment my heart cracked in a new place. Not because Madison had said it, because Ryan did not stop her. A bell-like sound rang from the dining room as someone tapped a glass. "Dinner," Madison called brightly, turning away from me as if the conversation was over. Guests began moving toward the table. Chairs scraped. People laughed. Someone said, "This looks incredible." Someone else said, "Madison, you outdid yourself." Madison, not Courtney. Not the woman who had cooked half the meal. Not the woman whose mortgage-free home held them all. I picked up the casserole with both hands and walked into the dining room. The table glittered under candlelight. White plates, gold chargers, crystal glasses, a centerpiece of winter flowers blocking half the faces across from each other. It looked expensive and cold. Every chair was filled. Ryan sat at the head of the table. My husband's chair. Thomas's chair. The chair he had used every Christmas to carve the turkey, tell the same bad joke, and raise a toast to the woman who made this house a home. Ryan sat there like he had inherited not only the furniture, but the right to erase the woman Thomas had loved. Madison sat at his right. Grace sat near the middle, stiff and pale. When she saw me standing there with the casserole, her eyes widened. "Grandma," she whispered. A few guests turned. I felt every gaze land on me. On the apron, on the dish in my hands, on the fact that there was nowhere for me to sit. Madison rose halfway from her chair, smiling too hard. "Oh, Courtney, just set that here." She pointed to an empty space on the sideboard. Not a chair, a surface. I set the casserole down carefully. My hands were shaking, but I would not let them see. Grace pushed back her chair. "I'll get another chair," she said. Ryan's head snapped toward her. "Grace, sit down." "But Grandma," I said, "sit down." The room went quiet. Grace's face turned red. I saw tears gather in her eyes, and something protective rose in me so fiercely I nearly spoke then. But Ryan stood first. He looked at me across the table. Not with love, not with regret, with irritation, like I had ruined the scene. "Mom," he said loud enough for everyone to hear, Why don't you eat in your room tonight?" The silence that followed was not empty. It was full of choices. Every person at that table chose what to do with my humiliation. Some stared at their plates. Some looked at Madison. One of Ryan's business contacts lifted his wine glass and then slowly put it back down. Madison lowered her eyes, but I saw the corner of her mouth move. Grace whispered, "Dad, stop." Ryan ignored her. He kept looking at me. "It's better for everyone," he added. "Better for everyone." The words moved through the room like cold air. I stood there in the dining room where I had hosted 27 Christmas dinners. I remembered Ryan at 5 years old sitting on a booster seat with gravy on his chin. Ryan at 10 sneaking cookies before dinner. Ryan at 16 rolling his eyes when Thomas made him help clear plates. Ryan at 23 bringing home laundry and calling me the best mom in the world. And now Ryan at 42 telling me to leave the table. In front of strangers. In front of my granddaughter. In my own house. I looked at him for a long moment. Long enough for his confidence to flicker. Maybe he expected me to cry. Maybe he expected me to plead. Maybe he expected me to remind everyone that I owned the house, paid the bills, cooked the food, and had tolerated more disrespect than any mother should. But I did not give him the scene he wanted. I untied the black apron. Slowly. The fabric slipped from my waist and fell over the back of an empty serving chair near the wall. Madison's face tightened. Ryan frowned. "Mom?" I raised one hand. Not high, just enough. He stopped. I looked at Grace, whose tears were now spilling silently down her cheeks. "I love you, sweetheart," I said. Her lips trembled. Then I looked at the table, at the guests pretending not to witness what they had just witnessed, at Madison sitting in my dining room like a queen on borrowed land, at Ryan sitting in Thomas's chair. And finally, I smiled. Not because I was happy, because something in me had become clear. "You enjoy your dinner," I said. My voice did not shake. That surprised even me. Ryan looked relieved at first. He thought he had won. He thought I was doing what I always did. Leaving quietly, making peace, protecting him. I turned and walked out of the dining room. Behind me, nobody spoke. Not until I reached the stairs. Then I heard Madison laugh softly and say, "Well, shall we?" That laugh followed me up every step. By the time I reached the hallway, my chest hurt so badly I had to grip the banister. I closed my bedroom door behind me. The little back bedroom was dark, except for the glow of the neighbors' Christmas lights through the blinds. My plate was not waiting there. No one had brought me food. No one had even pretended to care whether I ate. For 1 minute, I stood in the middle of that room and let the truth settle. My son had not lost his temper. He had not misspoken. He had not been confused. He had shown me exactly where he believed I belonged. Away from the table. Away from the guests. Away from the life I had built. I sat down at my small desk. Thomas's old watch rested beside my laptop. I touched it with 2 fingers. "I'm sorry," I whispered. Not to Ryan, to Thomas. To myself. To the woman I had been before I let love become surrender. Then I opened the drawer. Inside was the folder Eleanor Whitaker had told me to keep close. Bank statements, card numbers, account access instructions, notes, dates, evidence. My hands stopped shaking. Downstairs, laughter slowly returned to the dining room. They were eating. They were drinking. They were pretending I had never been there. I opened my laptop. The screen lit up my face, and for the first time that night, I felt calm. Ryan thought sending me to my room would make me small. He had no idea he had just sent me to the one place where I could take everything back. I did not cry when I opened my laptop. That surprised me. For years, I had cried over smaller things. A cold comment from Madison. A forgotten birthday call from Ryan. A family photo posted online where I had been cropped out, even though the picture was taken in my living room. But that night, after my son told me to eat in my room during Christmas dinner, something inside me went quiet. Not numb, quiet. There is a difference. Numbness is when you cannot feel the wound. Quiet is when the wound finally stops begging to be understood. Downstairs, I could hear laughter rising again. Chairs shifted. Silverware touched plates. Someone complimented the turkey. Someone else asked Ryan about the company. The company, my company. The company Thomas and I had built while Ryan was still learning how to tie his shoes. I stared at the login screen of my bank portal and typed my password carefully. One letter at a time. No shaking. No hesitation. The first account opened, then the second, then the business credit management page. Ryan's name appeared under authorized users. Ryan Palmer, authorized user. Those two words made my stomach turn. Authorized. I had authorized him to use my trust, not abuse it. I clicked his profile. There were 4 active cards connected to him. 2 business cards. 1 personal supplementary card. 1 premium card I had added him to years earlier for emergencies. Emergencies. I almost laughed. Apparently, emergencies now included steak dinners, designer watches, Atlanta hotels, wine bars, and Christmas catering designed to make Madison look elegant in a house she did not own. My cursor hovered over the first card. A warning box appeared. Are you sure you want to deactivate this card? For a moment, I saw Ryan as a little boy again, standing in the driveway with scraped knees crying because he had fallen off his bike. Mom, fix it. That had been the story of our life. Mom, fix it. Mom, pay it. Mom, forgive it. Mom, don't make it a thing. Downstairs, Ryan's voice floated up through the floorboards. Loud, confident, relaxed. He was telling a story. People laughed. He was not thinking about me. That helped. I clicked deactivate. The screen refreshed. Card ending in 421, inactive. 1. I moved to the second. Are you sure you want to deactivate this card? Yes, I whispered. Click. 2. The third card had the highest limit. That one hurt the most because I remembered the day I gave it to him. Grace had been 8. Ryan said he needed a reliable card for travel and client meetings. He had hugged me so tightly afterward. You always believe in me, Mom, he said. I did believe in him. That was the tragedy. I believed in a version of Ryan that no longer existed. Click. 3. The fourth card was connected to my personal account. I had added him after he told me he wanted to be able to help if I ever had a medical emergency. Just in case, Mom, he had said. Just in case had become just because. Click. 4. I sat back and looked at the screen. All inactive. Such a small word. Inactive. But it felt like the first breath I had taken in years. I opened my email next and drafted a message to the bank representative I had worked with for more than a decade. Subject: immediate revocation of authorized user access. My fingers moved faster now. I wrote that all cards issued to Ryan Palmer were to remain closed. No replacement cards were to be issued without my written approval. No credit limit increases. No account access. No phone authorization. No exceptions. Then I added one sentence that made my throat tighten. Please note that I am the sole owner and primary account holder. Sole owner, primary account holder. Words I should have remembered long before Christmas night. I sent it. Then I opened the business banking portal and removed Ryan's online access from the expense account, another warning appeared. This action may restrict the user from viewing, transferring, or initiating payments. Good. I clicked confirm. Downstairs, someone began playing Christmas music. Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas drifted up through the vents, soft and cruel. I thought of Grace sitting at that table, trying not to cry. My anger sharpened, not for myself this time, for her. Because Ryan had not only humiliated me, he had taught his daughter what disrespect looks like when everyone dresses nicely and calls it family. I opened the folder Eleanor had prepared for me. Inside was a checklist. She had made it after our last meeting when I told her I was not ready to revoke everything yet. Keep this close, she had said. If the day comes, you won't want to think through every step emotionally. Eleanor understood me better than my own son did. Step 1, revoke card access. Done. Step 2, notify bank in writing. Done. Step 3, change passwords. I changed every password Ryan might know. Business banking, personal banking, vendor portal, cloud storage, company email admin access, payroll approval system. Every time I changed one, I felt another lock slide into place. Step 4, contact attorney. I picked up my phone. It was Christmas night, nearly 8:30. For a moment, I hesitated. Then I remembered Ryan's voice. Why don't you eat in your room tonight? I called Eleanor. She answered on the second ring. Courtney. She did not sound sleepy. She sounded like she had been expecting me. It's time, I said. There was a pause. Not surprise. Understanding. What happened? I looked toward the door as if Ryan might burst through it. He told me to eat in my room during Christmas dinner. Eleanor was silent for 1 second too long. Then she said, In your house? Yes. In front of guests? Yes. And Grace. My voice softened. Yes? Eleanor exhaled through her nose. All right, she said. Have you revoked the cards? Yes. Online access? I'm doing it now. Good. Do not engage with him if he confronts you tonight. Say as little as possible. You canceled what was yours. That is enough. My eyes burned then, but still I did not cry. He's going to be furious. Let him be furious. He'll say I ruined Christmas. No, Courtney. He did that when he removed you from your own table. That sentence settled over me like a hand on my shoulder. I closed my eyes. For years, I had needed someone to say it plainly. Not soften it. Not excuse it. Not ask what I could have done differently. He did that. Not me. Eleanor continued. Tomorrow morning, I'll come by. We'll begin the next steps. The estate documents? Yes. And the company restructuring. My heart beat harder. Company restructuring. Those words had lived in the background for months. I had avoided them because they felt final. But Christmas dinner had made final feel merciful. I don't want to destroy him, I said. You are not destroying him. You are removing the weapons he has been using against you. I looked at Thomas's watch on the desk. What if I waited too long? You are acting now, Eleanor said. That matters. After we hung up, I sat in silence for a moment. Then I heard footsteps in the hallway. Light ones. A soft knock came at my door. Grandma Grace. I closed the laptop halfway and opened the door. She stood there with a plate wrapped in a napkin. Her eyes were red. I brought you food, she whispered. My heart nearly broke all over again. Oh, sweetheart. She stepped inside quickly, like she was afraid someone would see her. I'm sorry, she said. I tried to get a chair. Dad told me not to. I know. He was wrong. Those 3 words from a 16-year-old girl meant more to me than any apology Ryan had ever given. I took the plate from her hands and set it on the desk. Grace looked at the laptop, then at the folder, then back at me. Grandma, she whispered, are you doing something I could have lied? I almost did. But Grace had been living inside other people's lies long enough. Yes, I said. Her eyes widened. Are you leaving? No. Are they making you leave? The fear in her voice made my blood go cold. I reached for her hands. No one is making me leave my own house. She swallowed. Mom said maybe it would be better if you moved somewhere easier for older people. There it was. Another seed, another plan disguised as concern. I squeezed Grace's hands gently. Listen to me carefully. This is my home. It has always been my home. Grace nodded, but tears slipped down her cheeks. I don't like how they talk about you. I don't either. She looked surprised by my honesty. Then she hugged me, not politely, desperately. I held her tight and stared over her shoulder at the laptop screen glowing behind us. All inactive. For the first time that night, I understood something clearly. This was not revenge. This was protection. Protection for my home, my company, my dignity, and maybe somehow for Grace too. A loud burst of laughter came from downstairs. Ryan was still celebrating, still drinking, still pretending to be the generous host, still unaware that every card in his wallet had just become a piece of plastic. Grace pulled back and wiped her face. I should go before Mom notices. I kissed her forehead. Thank you for bringing me dinner. She gave me a sad little smile. You shouldn't have had to eat alone. No, I said softly. I shouldn't have. After she left, I locked my bedroom door. Then I returned to the desk and finished the last step on Eleanor's list. I printed confirmation pages, one by one. Card closed, access removed, password changed, authorization revoked. The printer hummed quietly, almost peacefully. Downstairs, Christmas dinner continued. Ryan lifted glasses. Madison smiled for guests. People praised the food I had cooked. And nobody at that table knew the truth yet. The woman they had sent upstairs had not gone there to hide. She had gone there to take back the power they thought she would never use. Ryan discovered the first declined card before dessert. I know because I heard his laugh change. There is a certain kind of laugh people use when they are trying to convince a room nothing is wrong. It comes out too loud, too quick, too polished. I was still upstairs sitting at my small desk with Grace's untouched plate beside me when the sound floated through the floor. Then came silence. Not complete silence. The kind where a room full of people keeps breathing but stops pretending. I stood slowly and walked to my bedroom door. Downstairs, Ryan said, "That's strange. Try it again." A woman murmured something I could not hear. Madison's voice followed sharp beneath the sweetness. Ryan. Then Ryan laughed again. Probably the machine. Happens all the time. It was not the machine. The catering assistant had stayed late to handle the final balance. Madison had insisted on a premium holiday service extra staff imported wine and a dessert table from a bakery she liked to name drop. I had warned Ryan 2 days earlier that Christmas dinner was not a business expense. He had ignored me. Now the bill had arrived, and the first card had failed. I opened my door a few inches. The house felt different already. The music was still playing, but softer now, as if someone had turned it down to hear the embarrassment better. Ryan said, "Use this one." A few seconds passed. Then the catering assistant spoke gently. "I'm sorry, Mr. Palmer. This one is declined too." Declined. Such a small word. But it traveled through that house like thunder. I stepped into the hallway. From where I stood, I could see part of the foyer below. Ryan was near the console table holding his wallet. Madison stood beside him, her smile frozen in place. The catering assistant, a young man in a black vest, held a payment tablet, and looked like he wished he were anywhere else. Several guests pretended not to watch, which meant every single one of them was watching. Ryan pulled out another card. "Try this." Madison whispered, "Ryan, what is going on?" "Nothing," he snapped under his breath. The assistant ran the card. A pause, another beep. "I'm sorry." Ryan's face darkened. "Run it again." "I did, sir." "Then your system is broken." The assistant swallowed. "I can call my manager." Madison's cheeks turned red, not from shame for me. Shame for herself. Shame that her perfect Christmas had developed a crack right where everyone could see. One of Ryan's business contacts, Douglas McAllister, cleared his throat and looked away. That seemed to bother Ryan more than the declined card. He lowered his voice, but anger carried it up the stairs. "Use the card on file." The assistant checked the tablet. That one was also declined. Madison's hand flew to Ryan's arm. All of them Ryan jerked away from her. "I'll handle it." But he was not handling anything. For years, Ryan had moved through life with the confidence of a man who believed someone else would always cover the balance. And that night, for the first time, the balance looked back at him and said no. He pulled out his phone and called the bank. I watched him pace. "Yes, this is Ryan Palmer. There's an issue with my card." A pause. "What do you mean you can't discuss it with me?" Another pause. "I'm an authorized user." His face changed. That was the moment. Not when the card declined. Not when Madison stared at him. Not when the guests whispered. The moment he heard the words from the bank. No longer authorized. His eyes lifted toward the stairs, toward my room, toward me. I did not move. Ryan ended the call without saying goodbye. Madison whispered, "Ryan." He looked at her, then at the guests, then back toward the stairs. His jaw clenched. "Excuse me?" he said. He started up the stairs fast, not walking, charging. Grace appeared at the bottom of the staircase. "Dad, don't." Ryan did not even slow down. "Move. Dad, please. I said move, Grace." Her face crumpled, and she stepped aside. That was when I opened my door fully. Ryan reached the top of the stairs and stopped when he saw me standing there. For 1 second, he looked almost shocked, as if he expected me to still be hidden away, crying into a napkin, waiting for permission to exist. "What did you do?" he demanded. His voice was low but dangerous. I kept my hand on the doorframe. I canceled what was mine. His eyes narrowed. "What does that mean?" "It means the cards are closed. You had no right." I stared at him. No right, after everything, after he sat in Thomas's chair, after he told me to eat in my room, after he charged his life to my accounts and called it business. A calmness settled over me again. I am the primary account holder, Ryan. I had every right. Madison had followed him halfway up the stairs. Behind her, guests gathered below in small clusters, pretending they were not listening. Ryan glanced down, saw the audience, and lowered his voice. "Mom, open them back up." "No." His face twitched. "This is not the time. It became the time when you sent me upstairs." Madison stepped up beside him, her voice tight. "Courtney, this is humiliating." I looked at her. "Yes, it is." She blinked as if she had not expected me to agree. Ryan leaned closer. "You're embarrassing me in front of my guests. Your guests are standing in my house." The words came out before I could soften them. And once they were in the air, there was no taking them back. Downstairs, someone whispered. Ryan's face flushed deep red. Madison's eyes darted toward the guests. Her perfect hostess mask was slipping by the second. "Courtney," she said carefully, "we can discuss this privately." We could have. I said. Before dinner, before the missing chair, before the apron, before Ryan told me I was making everyone uncomfortable. Ryan hissed, "Don't twist this. I am not twisting anything. I am repeating what happened." Grace stood at the bottom of the stairs with tears in her eyes. "Dad," she said softly, "you did say that." Ryan turned on her. "Stay out of this." That was the wrong thing to say. Something in me moved. I stepped forward. "Do not speak to her that way." Ryan looked back at me stunned. For years I had let him raise his voice, let him sigh, let him dismiss, let him take, but not at Grace, not now. His mouth opened, then closed. Madison tried again. "Courtney, people are watching." "Good," I said. The word shocked even me, but I meant it. For years, their cruelty had lived in private rooms, in little comments, in quiet rearrangements, in smiles that vanished when no one else was looking. Maybe it was time someone watched. Ryan took a breath, forcing his voice into something controlled. "Mom, you are overreacting. You got emotional because of a seating misunderstanding, and now you're punishing me financially." A seating misunderstanding. That was what he chose to call it. I looked down at the dining room, at the guests holding wine glasses, at the catered desserts waiting on the sideboard, at the table where my chair had never existed. Then I looked back at my son. "You told your mother to eat alone in her bedroom on Christmas night." His expression hardened. "You were making Madison uncomfortable, and Madison's comfort required my absence." Madison's mouth tightened. Ryan said nothing. That silence answered for him. The catering assistant cleared his throat from below. "I'm sorry, but I do need payment before we leave." The timing was almost cruel. Ryan closed his eyes for half a second. Douglas McAllister stepped forward awkwardly. "Ryan, if you need a minute, I don't need a minute," Ryan snapped. The room froze. There it was, the mask cracking in public. Ryan realized it too late. He turned back to me, voice trembling with rage. "You need to fix this." "No, Mom, no, you can't just cut me off. I can." I did. His hands curled into fists at his sides. Madison whispered, "Ryan, stop. Everyone can hear you." He ignored her. "You want to make me look like a fool?" I shook my head. "You did that when you tried to live like a rich man on your mother's credit." A gasp came from somewhere downstairs. Madison's face went white. Ryan stared at me as if I had slapped him. For the first time all night, he had no quick answer. Because the truth has a way of standing upright even when people try to bury it. He leaned in his voice, barely above a whisper. "You'll regret this." I looked at him, and for a moment I saw the little boy he had been. Then I saw the man standing in front of me. Spoiled, angry, exposed, and still expecting me to rescue him. "No, Ryan," I said quietly. "I regret not doing it sooner." His face changed again. This time, something like fear moved behind his eyes. Not guilt. Fear. Because he was beginning to understand the cards were not the whole story. Madison understood it too. I saw it in the way she gripped the railing. "What else did you do?" she asked. I did not answer her. "Not yet." I turned toward the catering assistant. "Young man I called down, please send the invoice to my email. I'll make sure your company is paid tonight." Ryan's head snapped toward me. "You're paying them?" "Yes," I said. "For their work, not for your performance." The assistant looked relieved. "Thank you, ma'am?" "Ma'am." One respectful word from a stranger nearly undid me. Ryan stood there, breathing hard. The guests were no longer pretending not to watch. Some looked uncomfortable. Some looked fascinated. A few looked like they were finally putting pieces together. Madison descended the stairs quickly, trying to salvage what remained. "Everyone, please, dessert is ready," she said with a brittle laugh. But no one moved right away, because the fantasy had broken. Ryan Palmer, successful son, generous host, future head of Palmer Medical Supply, had just been declined in front of everyone. And the mother he had sent upstairs had calmly revealed that his entire image was built on borrowed credit. My credit. My patience. My silence. Ryan looked at me one last time before going downstairs. This time, he did not look annoyed. He looked cornered. And I knew then the night was not over. Because men like Ryan do not lose control quietly. They look for someone else to blame. And before Christmas was finished, he would try to make me the villain. But for the first time in years, I was ready to let the truth speak louder than his anger. Ryan did exactly what I expected him to do. He blamed me, not himself, not Madison, not the lies, not the secret charges, not the fact that he had humiliated his own mother in front of a Christmas table full of people. Me. After the catering assistant left with my email and a promise that his company would be paid, the guests began drifting back toward the dining room. But the mood had changed. Nobody laughed the same way. Nobody complimented the house anymore. Madison tried to save the evening with dessert. "Everyone, please," she said, clapping her hands lightly. "There's pecan pie, chocolate torte, and coffee." Her voice was bright, but her face was tight. Ryan stood near the staircase, staring at me like I had set fire to his life. I came downstairs slowly. Not because I was afraid, because I wanted him to see I was not hiding anymore. The second my foot touched the foyer floor, he stepped toward me. "You planned this?" he said. I looked at him. "I planned to protect myself." "No," he snapped. "You waited until people were here. You wanted to embarrass me." A few guests froze near the dining room entrance. Madison whispered, "Ryan not here." But Ryan was past listening. His pride had been wounded, and wounded pride is louder than truth. "You could have talked to me privately," he said. I almost smiled. "Like you talked to me privately before telling me to eat in my room." His face hardened. That was different. "How you were making things tense. I was standing there with food. You were looking at everyone like a victim." That word landed sharply. Victim. People like Ryan love that word when they want to make pain sound like performance. Grace appeared beside the hallway, arms wrapped around herself. "Dad, stop," she said. Ryan pointed toward the stairs. "Go to your room." Grace flinched. I stepped between them. "She stays." Ryan laughed once bitterly. "Now you're turning my daughter against me too." "No," I said. "You're doing that all by yourself." The room went silent again. Madison's face flashed with panic. She could feel control slipping. Her perfect Christmas dinner had turned into a public unraveling, and there was no centerpiece large enough to hide it. Ryan lowered his voice, but everyone still heard him. "You want to talk about money? Fine. Let's talk about money. You've held it over my head my entire life." I stared at him. There it was. The story he had told himself. The story Madison had helped polish. The cruel mother. The helpless son. The inheritance unfairly withheld. "You mean the money I used to pay your tuition?" I asked. "Your rent, your cars, your debts, Grace's school, the cards you used without accountability." His jaw tightened. "I worked for the company. You worked when you felt like it." A low murmur moved through the guests. Ryan looked around and realized people were listening too closely. So he changed tactics. He softened his voice. "That was always more dangerous." "Mom," he said, almost pleading, "you're confused. You're upset. This is why I worry about you making big financial decisions alone." Madison's eyes flicked to him. I saw it. A signal. a shared strategy. My skin went cold. There it was again. The seed Eleanor had warned me about. Confused, upset, unable to handle decisions. I stood straighter. Be careful, Ryan. He blinked. I walked to the side table near the dining room where I had placed my folder earlier after coming downstairs. Madison's eyes followed it immediately. She knew that folder. Maybe not what was inside, but she knew enough to fear it. I opened it. Ryan scoffed. What is this now? The conversation you said you wanted, I replied. I pulled out the first stack of statements. Not all of them, just enough. I placed them on the table. These are charges from the business cards you used over the past 18 months. Ryan's face shifted. Only slightly. But I saw it. Madison saw it too. I turned the first page toward him. Steakhouse in Atlanta? $640, listed as client development. No client name attached. Ryan rolled his eyes. I told you networking. I turned another page. Boutique hotel in Atlanta. 2 nights. Listed as regional vendor meeting. There was no vendor meeting that week. Madison's eyes narrowed. Atlanta, she said. Ryan did not look at her. I continued. Wine bar, jewelry store, parking garage, property management company. Madison stepped closer. What property management company? Ryan snapped. Madison, not now. Her face went pale. No. What property management company? I looked at Ryan. For the first time that night, he looked trapped. I did not enjoy it. That surprised me. I thought maybe I would feel satisfaction when the truth began to show its teeth. But all I felt was grief. Because this was still my son, and he had still done this. I slid the statement toward Madison. Magnolia Square Residences, I said. Her mouth opened slightly. Residences. Ryan reached for the paper. I placed my hand over it. No. His eyes flashed. Mom? No, I repeated. You wanted to talk about money. We are talking. One of Madison's friends whispered. Oh my God, before catching herself. Ryan heard it. His face burned red. Madison turned on him. You have an apartment in Atlanta? It's not what it sounds like. That sentence is almost always proof that it is exactly what it sounds like. Grace covered her mouth. I wished she had not heard it. But secrets do not protect children. They only teach them that lies are normal. Madison's voice dropped. Ryan, answer me. He looked at her, then at me, then at the guests. I used it for business travel. I turned another page. Then why were there flower deliveries to that address? Madison went still. Ryan's eyes snapped to mine. You had no right digging through my life. Your life was charged to my accounts. He had no answer. Madison grabbed the statement from the table. Her hands shook as she read. Jewelry, she whispered, then louder. You told me you couldn't afford to replace my bracelet after the class broke. Ryan rubbed his forehead. Madison, this is not the place. She laughed, but it came out broken. Oh, now this isn't the place. The guests looked everywhere but at them. Douglas McAllister quietly set down his dessert plate. Ryan pointed at me. This is what she wanted. She wanted to turn us against each other. No, Madison said, still staring at the paper. She didn't make you rent an apartment. Ryan's face twisted. You're really going to believe her? Madison looked up slowly. I'm looking at the charges, Ryan. For the first time all night, Madison and I were standing on the same side of a fact. Not the same side emotionally. Not even close. But facts do not care who likes each other. Grace's voice trembled. Dad. Is there someone else? Ryan looked at his daughter. For 1 second, I saw panic break through the anger. Grace, this has nothing to do with you. That means, yes, she whispered. My heart broke for her. Ryan stepped toward her, but she stepped back. That stopped him more effectively than anything I could have said. Madison turned another page. Who is Vanessa? She asked. The name came from a receipt, a gift note attached to a flower order. Ryan closed his eyes. There it was. The secret had a name Madison had not known, a name Grace should never have had to hear on Christmas night. I took the paper gently from Madison's hand. That is enough for tonight, I said. Ryan laughed harshly. Oh, now it's enough. After you parade everything in front of people, I showed only what was necessary. Necessary for what? For everyone to understand why the cards are closed. He stepped closer, voice low. You think this makes you powerful? No, I said. It makes me finished. That word quieted him. Finished. Not angry, not hurt. Finished. Madison sank into a chair near the wall, the statement still in her lap. Her perfect hair framed a face that suddenly looked older, harder stripped of performance. Grace was crying silently. I wanted to go to her, but I knew if I moved, Ryan would use it. He would say I was manipulating her. He would turn comfort into accusation. So I stayed still. Ryan looked around the room, at the guests, at Madison, at Grace, at me. He had lost the table, lost the room, lost the image. So he reached for the only weapon left. You're going to regret humiliating me, he said. Madison looked up sharply. Ryan. He ignored her. You think a few statements prove anything? You think you can cut me out because you're upset I did not answer? Because the next part was not for the guests. Not yet. Eleanor had told me not to reveal everything in anger. So I closed the folder. Ryan noticed. His eyes narrowed. What else is in there? I held the folder against my chest. Things my lawyer will handle. That was when fear returned to his face. Real fear. Not embarrassment. Not anger. Fear. Because Ryan knew what else might be in those pages. He knew the charges were only one trail. He knew I had not mentioned the emails, the access requests, the conversations about my age, the way he had begun preparing to take more than money. Madison stood slowly. What lawyer? I looked at her. My lawyer. Ryan swallowed. The guests were silent. The Christmas tree glowed in the living room, silver and gold, beautiful and cold. Beneath it were wrapped gifts Madison had arranged by color. Not one of them mattered anymore, because the real Christmas gift had already been opened. The truth, ugly, expensive, unwrapped in front of everyone. I turned to Grace. Sweetheart, go upstairs if you want to. She wiped her face. No, she said quietly. I want to stay with you. Ryan looked as if she had slapped him. Maybe she had in the only way a daughter can, by choosing the person who told the truth. Madison stared at the statement again, whispering the name under her breath. Vanessa. Ryan said nothing. For once, he had run out of performance. I looked at my son and felt the last fragile hope inside me collapse. Not because he had spent the money, not because of Atlanta, not even because of the woman whose name had just shattered his marriage in front of Christmas guests. Because even after all of it, he was still more ashamed of being exposed than of what he had done. That was when I understood something I had been avoiding for years. Ryan was not going to stop because he loved me. He was only going to stop when he could no longer reach what belonged to me. And by morning, he would learn that the credit cards were only the first door I had closed. Eleanor Whitaker arrived the next morning at 9 sharp. Not 9:05, not 9:10, 9. That was Eleanor. precise enough to make people nervous before she even opened her briefcase. I had barely slept. The house felt bruised after Christmas night. Empty wine glasses still sat on the sideboard. Madison's perfect centerpiece had begun to wilt. Half the dessert table remained untouched because nobody had wanted pecan pie after hearing about Ryan's secret apartment in Atlanta. Ryan had not apologized. Of course he had not. He had spent the night pacing downstairs, whispering harshly with Madison, then slamming doors like a teenager. Around midnight, I heard him on the phone in the backyard. "She's losing it," he said. I stood in the dark hallway and listened. My mother is not thinking clearly. There it was again. The same ugly little seed. Confused, emotional, unstable. Not once did he say I hurt her. Not once did he say I stole from her. Not once did he say I humiliated my mother in front of everyone. By morning, I was no longer sad. I was ready. When the doorbell rang, Madison was in the kitchen, pale and silent, drinking coffee she had not made herself. Ryan was standing by the window, phone in hand, still wearing yesterday's anger like a suit. Grace sat at the breakfast table with her knees pulled close, watching everyone. I opened the front door. Eleanor stood on the porch in a dark wool coat, silver hair, pinned neatly leather briefcase in one hand. "Merry Christmas, Courtney," she said. I almost laughed at the absurdity of it. "Merry Christmas, Eleanor." Her eyes moved past me into the house. "Is he here?" "Yes." "Good." That one word made Ryan look up from across the foyer. He walked toward us with forced confidence. "Eleanor," he said, as if greeting an employee. "Glad you're here. Maybe you can talk some sense into my mother." Eleanor stepped inside, removed her gloves, and looked at him over the rim of her glasses. "I'm not here to talk sense into Courtney." Ryan's smile tightened. "I think there's been a misunderstanding." "No," Eleanor said. "There has been documentation." The room went still. Madison set down her coffee cup too hard. It clicked against the counter. Ryan's eyes flicked to me. "Mom, really? You brought a lawyer into our family Christmas?" I looked at him. "You brought theft, humiliation, and threats into my house. Eleanor is just the person who knows what to do with them." His face darkened. Careful. Eleanor turned toward him. "Mr. Palmer, I would advise you not to threaten my client in front of me. My client. Not your mother. Not poor Courtney. My client." For the first time in years, someone stood beside me with language. Ryan could not twist into guilt. He laughed once. "This is ridiculous." Eleanor opened her briefcase and removed a folder. "Let's sit down." Ryan did not move. "This is my home too." "No," I said. His head snapped toward me. I kept my voice calm. "This is not your home too. You live here because I allowed it." Madison's face tightened, but she said nothing. Grace looked down at her hands. Ryan stepped closer. "Mom, don't start rewriting history. I'm done letting you write it for me." Eleanor gestured toward the living room. "Now, sit." There was something in her tone that made even Ryan obey. We gathered in the living room. The same living room Madison had redesigned until it no longer looked like mine. The same room where Thomas used to fall asleep in his recliner with football on low volume. His recliner was gone, now moved to the garage because Madison said it ruined the aesthetic. I sat on the sofa. Eleanor sat beside me. Ryan remained standing for a few seconds, trying to look powerful, then finally sat across from us. Madison sat beside him, but not close enough to touch. Grace stayed near the doorway. Eleanor opened the folder. "Courtney has revoked all authorized user access connected to her personal and business credit accounts. That action is complete and will not be reversed." Ryan leaned forward. "You can't just cut me off without notice." Eleanor looked at him calmly. "You were an authorized user, not an owner. I used those cards for business." Some charges may have been business-related, Eleanor said. Many were not. Madison looked away. Ryan's jaw worked. Eleanor continued. As of this morning, Courtney has also revoked your online access to Palmer Medical Supply's financial systems pending a full internal audit. Ryan's face changed. That hit harder than the cards. What? You are temporarily suspended from any spending authority vendor approval, reimbursement, submission, or client entertainment expense. He stood. No, absolutely not. Eleanor did not flinch. Sit down, Mr. Palmer. This company is my father's legacy. I felt the words before I answered them. No, Ryan. It is your father's and mine. He turned on me. You always say that, because it is true. You sat behind a desk and kept that company alive after your father died. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out fast enough. So I kept going. I paid the employees. I negotiated the contracts. I handled the suppliers. I kept the doors open while you were still asking me to pay your rent. Madison whispered. Ryan. He ignored her. You're doing this because you're angry about last night. I'm doing this because last night showed me what you really believe. You believe I should be quiet, invisible, and useful. And as long as I kept paying, you were happy to call that family. Grace's eyes filled with tears again. Ryan pointed toward Eleanor's folder. You have no proof I did anything illegal. Eleanor turned one page. We have enough to begin an audit. If the audit confirms personal use of company funds, Courtney will decide whether to pursue repayment civil action or referral to appropriate authorities. Madison went white. Authorities, she whispered. Ryan shot her a look. Don't panic. But she was already panicking, because Madison loved luxury but she hated consequences. Eleanor removed another document. Additionally, Courtney is updating her estate plan. Ryan froze. There it was, the thing he cared about most. Not the apology. Not Grace. Not the marriage he had shattered. The inheritance. What does that mean, he asked? I looked at him. It means you will no longer have informal access to anything I own. His eyes narrowed. You're cutting me out. I am protecting what I built. From your own son. From the man who used my accounts to fund a secret life while telling people I was too old to manage my own. Madison inhaled sharply. Ryan's face hardened. You don't know what you're talking about. Eleanor's voice cut through his. Courtney is fully competent. I have worked with her for years. Any attempt to suggest otherwise without legitimate medical basis will be addressed aggressively. The word aggressively landed exactly where it needed to. Ryan looked at Eleanor, then at me. For the first time, he seemed to understand that I was not alone in this anymore. He tried a softer voice. Mom? Come on. This is getting out of hand. We're family. I almost smiled. Family. The word people use when they want forgiveness without accountability. You remembered that too late, I said. His expression cracked for half a second. Then anger filled it again. So what, you're throwing me out now? Eleanor answered before I could. Courtney is not throwing anyone out this morning. But she is beginning the legal process to end your residence in this home if you do not leave voluntarily within a reasonable time frame. Madison stood abruptly. You can't be serious. I looked at her. I am. Her voice rose. Where are we supposed to go? I stared at the woman who had taken my bedroom, my table, my Christmas, and nearly my dignity. I asked myself the same question when you moved me into the back room. She flinched. Good. Ryan stepped toward me. You would put your granddaughter out, Grace spoke before I could. Don't use me. Everyone turned. Her voice shook, but she kept going. Dad, don't use me to make Grandma feel bad. You do that all the time. Ryan looked stunned. Grace-number tears slipped down her face. You told her to eat in her room. You let Mom treat her like she didn't matter. And now you're acting like you care about where I sleep, Madison, whispered Grace. That's enough. Grace turned to her. No, Mom, it's not. The room went silent. I wanted to pull Grace into my arms, but I let her stand. She deserved to hear her own voice. Ryan looked at his daughter like he did not recognize her. Maybe because she was no longer playing the quiet child in his version of the story. Eleanor closed the folder. There is more to discuss, but not in a shouting match. Ryan, you will receive formal notice regarding the audit and your suspension from financial authority. Madison, if you have used or benefited from company funds knowingly, you may want to seek independent advice. Madison sat down slowly. Ryan laughed, but it was hollow. This is insane. No, I said. What was insane was believing I would let you keep doing this forever. He looked at me, then really looked, and I think he finally saw something he had not seen in years. Not his safety net, not his bank, not the old woman he could send upstairs. Me, Courtney Palmer. The woman who had buried a husband, built a company, paid off a house, raised a son, and survived every quiet humiliation he thought had made me smaller. I stood. This meeting is over for now. Ryan's eyes flashed. You don't get to decide that. I walked to the front door and opened it. Cold December air rushed in. In this house, I said I do. No one moved. Then Eleanor stood beside me. Ryan looked from her to me, breathing hard. Madison stared at the floor. Grace wiped her tears with her sleeve. The Christmas tree still glittered behind them, but the room no longer looked festive. It looked exposed. Ryan did not leave that morning. Not yet. But something else left. His certainty. And once a man like Ryan loses the belief that everyone will keep protecting his lies, the truth starts catching up fast. That afternoon, Grace came to my room with a manila envelope pressed against her chest. She knocked so softly I almost didn't hear it. When I opened the door, she looked over her shoulder first, then slipped inside before I could ask what was wrong. Grandma, she whispered, I need to show you something. Her face scared me. Not because she was crying, because she wasn't. Grace had cried the night before. She had cried that morning, but now her eyes were dry-wide and frightened in a way that told me she had crossed from sadness into fear. I closed the door behind her. What is it, sweetheart? She held out the envelope with both hands. I should have told you earlier. My stomach tightened. Grace, I was scared. I took the envelope slowly. It was heavier than I expected. Inside were printed emails, screenshots, a few handwritten notes. Some pages were wrinkled like she had folded and unfolded them many times before finding the courage to bring them to me. At first, I did not understand what I was seeing. Then I read the subject line on the first email. Concern regarding Courtney Palmer's capacity. My hands went cold. I looked up at Grace. She swallowed hard. I found them on Dad's laptop. The room seemed to tilt. What do you mean, found them? He left it open one night. I was trying to print my history paper, and his email was still up. I saw your name. She pointed to the page. I wasn't trying to snoop, I promise. I know, I said, though my voice sounded far away. I sat at the edge of the bed and began reading. The email was from Ryan to a man named Victor Lang, a financial consultant I had never met. Ryan wrote that he was increasingly concerned about my judgment. He claimed I was becoming forgetful, emotional, resistant to necessary business modernization. He said I was making irrational financial decisions. I almost laughed at that. Irrational. from the man who had rented a secret apartment in Atlanta with company funds. I turned the page. Another email. This one was worse. Ryan asked what steps would be required if an elderly parent was no longer capable of managing business interests or personal assets. Elderly parent? Not my mother. Not Courtney. Elderly parent. As if I were a problem to be filed. Grace sat beside me, twisting her fingers together. I didn't understand all of it at first, she whispered. But then Mom and Dad started talking about you moving somewhere with care. My eyes lifted. With care, Grace nodded. Mom said it would sound better if they called it independent senior living first. She said people don't fight that as much. For a moment, I could not breathe. The back bedroom, the missing chair, the little comments about my memory. Madison saying I got overwhelmed. Ryan telling people I was confused. It had not been random. It had been rehearsal. They had been building a story around me. A story where I was too old to manage my own life. Too emotional to run my own company. Too fragile to stay in my own home. I turned another page. There were screenshots of messages between Ryan and Madison. Madison, she'll resist if you make it about money. Make it about safety. Ryan, she won't sign anything if Eleanor is involved. Madison, then don't involve Eleanor until after. Ryan, we need access before she changes the trust. Trust. My heart pounded. They had been thinking ahead. Not just cards, not just the house, everything. I pressed one hand to my chest. Grace grabbed my arm. Grandma, I'm all right. But I wasn't. There is a special kind of pain in discovering someone wants your money. There is a deeper pain in discovering your own child is willing to question your mind to get it. Ryan had not only been taking from me, he had been preparing to erase my authority over my own life. I read another screenshot. Madison, if Courtney has one public episode, people will believe it. Ryan, she won't make a scene. Madison, then push her. Push her. The words blurred. I saw Christmas dinner again. The missing chair, the apron, the way Madison smiled when I stood there with the casserole. The way Ryan told me to eat in my room. Had they wanted me to break down? Had they wanted me to cry in front of everyone? Had they hoped I would shout, shake, collapse, prove their little story true? Grace whispered. That's why I tried to stop Dad last night. I turned to her. She looked smaller than 16. I heard Mom say before dinner that if you got emotional, people would finally see what they were dealing with. My throat burned. And you kept this all alone? Grace nodded, tears finally filling her eyes. I didn't know what to do. If I told Dad I saw it, he'd be furious. If I told Mom, she'd say I misunderstood. And I didn't want to hurt you. Oh, my sweet girl. She had carried grown-up betrayal in a child's hands. I pulled her into my arms. You did not hurt me, I whispered. They did. She began to cry then. I'm sorry I waited. You were scared. I should have protected you. I held her tighter. No, you are the child. We were supposed to protect you. That sentence broke something open in both of us. Grace cried into my shoulder while I stared at the papers scattered across my quilt. Ryan's words, Madison's strategy, their plan, their greed had shape now, dates, sentences, proof. After a few minutes, I reached for my phone. Grace wiped her face. Are you calling Ms. Whitaker? Yes. Eleanor answered quickly. Courtney, I need you to come back. Her voice changed. What happened? Grace found emails. Silence. Then, what kind of emails? The kind where Ryan asks how to prove I'm mentally unfit. Eleanor did not speak for 3 seconds. When she did, her voice was colder than I had ever heard it. Do not let those documents leave your possession. Photograph everything. Put the originals somewhere secure. I'm on my way. I looked at Grace. She's coming. Grace nodded, but fear crossed her face again. Grandma? Dad can't know I gave them to you. He won't hear it from me, but he'll figure it out. Maybe he would. Ryan was careless with money, but not stupid when cornered. I touched Grace's cheek. Then we will protect you too. She looked at me like she wanted to believe that more than anything. 20 minutes later, I heard Ryan downstairs. His voice was angry. Where's Grace? Madison answered. I thought she was in her room? She's not. Grace froze. I stood and gathered the papers, quickly sliding them back into the envelope. Ryan's footsteps moved through the hallway below. Grace. Her eyes widened. I put a finger to my lips and guided her toward the small closet beside my bathroom, not to hide her like a prisoner, to give her a moment. Then Ryan's footsteps came up the stairs. Heavy. Fast. He knocked once and opened my door without waiting. That alone told me how little he respected me. Is Grace in here? I stood between him and the closet. You do not enter my room without permission. He blinked, surprised by my tone. Don't start with me. Where's my daughter? Why? Because she's my daughter, and I'm your mother. That did not stop you from treating me like a problem to be removed. His eyes narrowed. What does that mean? I held his stare. It means you should choose your next words carefully. Ryan looked around the room. His gaze landed on the corner of the envelope sticking out from beneath my folded sweater on the bed. For 1 second, his face changed. Recognition, then fear, then rage. What is that I did not move? What is what he stepped forward? I stepped in front of him. Leave. Mom, leave my room. His voice dropped. What did she give you so he knew? Not exactly maybe, but enough. The closet door opened behind me. Grace stepped out. Her face was pale, but her chin was lifted. I gave her the truth. Ryan stared at her. The room went silent. Then his expression turned into something I had never wanted to see on my son's face while looking at his child. Betrayal. Not shame, not sorrow. Betrayal. As if Grace had wronged him by refusing to protect his lies. You went through my computer, he said. Grace's voice shook. You were trying to take Grandma's life away. I was trying to help this family. No, she whispered. You were trying to take her house. Ryan pointed at her. You don't understand adult things. That old line? That convenient line. I moved closer to Grace. She understands enough. Ryan looked at me. You're turning her against me. No, Ryan. You keep saying that because it is easier than admitting she sees you. His face flushed. For a moment, I thought he might shout. Then the doorbell rang downstairs. Eleanor. Ryan's head turned. I smiled slightly. Good. Now the adults can discuss adult things. His eyes snapped back to mine. For the first time, I saw it clearly. Ryan was afraid. Not of losing my love. He had already taken that for granted. He was afraid of losing control. And with Grace standing beside me, the envelope between us and Eleanor Whitaker at the front door, that control was slipping out of his hands faster than he could grab it. Eleanor walked into my house like a woman entering a courtroom. Ryan was still standing in my bedroom doorway when we heard her voice downstairs. Courtney. I looked at him. You should go down. His jaw tightened. I'm not going anywhere until I know what Grace gave you. Grace stepped closer to me. That tiny movement told me everything. My granddaughter felt safer beside me than beside her own father. I held the manila envelope against my chest. You will find out downstairs, I said, with witnesses. Ryan's face changed. Witnesses? Yes. I moved past him before he could block me. Grace stayed at my side. When we reached the living room, Eleanor was already standing near the fireplace removing documents from her briefcase. Madison sat on the sofa, pale and stiff, her hands locked together. She had clearly heard enough from the hallway to know the situation had shifted again. And beside Eleanor stood my younger sister, Diane Foster. Diane was 72, sharp-eyed, and not easily impressed. She had driven in from Greensboro that morning after I called her, and said only, "I need family here who remembers the truth." Diane took one look at Ryan and said, "Well, you look like your father when he was angry, but you sure don't act like him." Ryan's mouth tightened. "Aunt Diane, this doesn't concern you." Diane took off her gloves slowly. "When my sister is being pushed out of her own life, it concerns me." Madison looked at Ryan. "You didn't tell me Diane was coming." Ryan snapped, "I didn't know." "That was the point," Eleanor said. I sat in the armchair near the window. Not the sofa, not the side chair Madison usually pushed me toward when guests came. The armchair. Thomas's old reading chair had been removed months ago, but that morning I claimed the best seat left. Grace sat on the ottoman beside me. Ryan noticed. Of course he did. Eleanor placed a folder on the coffee table. "We are going to have one conversation," she said. "A clear one. No shouting, no intimidation, no accusations of confusion. If anyone cannot manage that, this meeting ends and future communication goes through legal channels only." Ryan laughed bitterly. "You're acting like I'm some criminal." Eleanor looked at him. "I'm acting like you are a man who has been caught misusing financial access and discussing ways to challenge your mother's competency." Madison inhaled sharply. Ryan's head turned toward Grace. "You had no right." Grace flinched, but she did not look away. "I had every right to protect Grandma. You're a child, and you're acting like one," Diane said. The room went silent. I almost smiled. Almost. Ryan pointed at Diane. "Stay out of this." Diane leaned back. "Make me." For the first time all day, Ryan had no immediate answer. Eleanor opened the meeting. "Courtney has made several decisions. They are not requests. They are decisions." Madison's eyes flicked to me. Ryan folded his arms. "Let's hear them." I looked at my son. Really looked at him. He was still handsome. Still polished. Still wearing the expensive watch I now suspected had been repaired with my money. But the charm was gone. Without it, he looked smaller. Not younger. Smaller. I took a breath. "First, you and Madison will leave this house." Madison's face went white. Ryan leaned forward. "No." "Yes," I said. "You will have a legal time frame. Eleanor will provide written notice. I am not throwing Grace out. Grace will always have a place with me. But you and Madison will no longer live here as if this house belongs to you." Madison's voice cracked. "Courtney, where are we supposed to go?" I looked at her. "Somewhere you can afford without my credit cards." Her mouth opened, then closed. Ryan stood. "This is insane." Eleanor's voice cut through the room. "Sit down." "I will not sit down while she threatens my family." Diane laughed once. "Your family? You told your mother to eat in her room on Christmas?" Ryan turned red. "That has been blown completely out of proportion." Grace whispered, "No, it hasn't." Ryan looked at her again, and this time he seemed to realize she was not coming back to his side just because he demanded it. I continued, "Second, you will cooperate with a full audit of all company expenses charged through cards and accounts connected to Palmer Medical Supply." Ryan's eyes narrowed. "And if I don't," Eleanor answered. "Then Courtney will pursue all available legal remedies." Madison looked at Ryan. "What does that mean?" It means Eleanor said repayment demands civil claims possible reporting if warranted and immediate permanent removal from all company financial authority. Madison's hands began to tremble. Ryan noticed and snapped, "Stop acting scared." She stared at him. "I am scared, Ryan. You rented an apartment in Atlanta and lied to me. That is not what this meeting is about." "It is exactly what this meeting is about," I said. "Lies, money, control." Ryan looked at me with disgust. "You're enjoying this?" "No," I said. "I am surviving it." That quieted him more than anger would have. I reached for the envelope Grace had given me. Ryan's face tightened. "Don't." I looked at him. That word no longer works on me. I handed the envelope to Eleanor. She removed the printed emails and placed copies on the coffee table. Madison leaned forward slowly. "What are those?" Eleanor answered communications regarding attempts to frame Courtney as mentally unfit to manage her assets. Madison's face drained of color. Ryan said quickly, "That is not what that was." Diane picked up one page and read aloud. "If Courtney has one public episode, people will believe it." Her voice went cold. She looked at Madison. "That yours?" Madison did not answer. Grace's eyes filled again, but she stayed still. Ryan reached for the paper, but Eleanor moved it out of his reach. "These are copies," she said. "The originals and digital backups will be preserved." Ryan's mask slipped completely. "You had no right to go through my private emails." Grace spoke before anyone else could. "You had no right to plan to take Grandma's home." Madison covered her mouth. Ryan turned on her. "You knew what we were trying to do." Madison's eyes flashed. "No, you told me we were protecting family assets." Diane snorted. "That's a fancy way to say stealing." "I didn't steal anything," Ryan snapped. I looked at him. "You stole my peace first. The money came after." That sentence hung in the room. Eleanor continued. "Third Courtney is revising her estate plan. Assets will be protected through a trust. Ryan will have no direct control over Courtney's home company interests or accounts." Ryan's voice dropped. "So you're cutting me out?" "I am cutting off your access," I said. "There is a difference. I'm your son. And I am your mother. That did not protect me from you." For a moment, I thought I saw something in his face. Pain. Maybe shame, but then it hardened into anger again. "You're doing all this because of Madison." Madison's head snapped toward him. "Excuse me," Ryan pointed at her. "You pushed for the dinner? You wanted the house to look perfect. You wanted Mom upstairs." Madison stood. "Don't you dare put this all on me. You said she was becoming a problem, and you said we needed control before she changed the trust." The room went dead silent. There it was, out loud, from Madison's own mouth. Ryan stared at her. Madison realized what she had said. Eleanor wrote something down. Diane leaned back slowly, eyebrows raised. Grace whispered, "Dad." Ryan's face went pale. I felt no triumph, only a deep, aching sadness. Because even now they were not sorry for what they had planned. They were sorry the plan had been heard. Eleanor closed her pen. "That statement will be noted." Ryan pointed at her. "You can't use a family argument against me." Eleanor's expression did not change. "I can use anything relevant to protecting my client." My client. Again, those words steadied me. I looked at Ryan. "Fourth, you will stop telling people I am confused, unstable, forgetful, or incapable. If you have concerns, you may provide legitimate medical evidence through proper channels. Otherwise, every word you say will be treated as an attempt to damage my reputation and control my assets." Ryan sat back slowly. He finally understood the trap had closed. Not because I had set him up, because his own words had. Madison sank onto the sofa. "What about Grace?" she asked quietly. I looked at my granddaughter. Grace looked back at me, scared but hopeful. Grace is 16, I said. She is your daughter. I will not interfere with that. But this house remains open to her. Always. And I will make sure she has financial protection for her education that neither of you can touch. Ryan's eyes narrowed. What does that mean? It means Grace's future will not depend on your honesty. He flinched. Good. Madison looked at Grace then, and for once, there was something like shame in her face. Grace did not move toward her. That said enough. The meeting lasted another 30 minutes. Eleanor explained timelines, written notices, audit procedures, preservation of documents, communication boundaries. No more entering my room without permission. No more using my accounts. No more presenting themselves as owners of my home. Every sentence sounded like a lock clicking shut. Ryan argued less as the minutes passed. Not because he agreed. Because he was calculating. Men like Ryan do not surrender. They look for another door. When Eleanor finally stood, Ryan said, "You're going to tear this family apart." I stood too. No, Ryan? I am refusing to keep pretending it was whole. He stared at me. Madison began crying softly, but I could not tell whether she was grieving her marriage, her lifestyle, or the fact that people had finally seen her clearly. Diane came to stand beside me. Grace reached for my hand, and Ryan looked at the three of us together. For the first time, he looked outnumbered in a room he had once controlled. I walked to the front door and opened it. The cold air swept in again. "This meeting is over," I said. Ryan did not move, so I added the words he had used on me for years. "Don't make it a thing." Diane made a sound that might have been a laugh. Ryan's face burned with humiliation, but he walked out onto the porch. Madison followed him. Not beside him. Behind him. And as the door closed, I realized something. The house felt different. Not healed, not peaceful yet, but mine. For the first time in a long time, it felt like mine. Ryan did not leave the house that day. Not really. He stepped onto the porch because I told him to, but within an hour he was back inside, moving through the rooms like a man trying to prove he still belonged there. He opened cabinets louder than necessary. He took phone calls in the hallway. He slammed the refrigerator door. Every sound was a message. I am still here. I am still angry. You have not won. But I was no longer trying to win. That was what Ryan did not understand. For years he had treated our family like a contest. Whoever spoke loudest won. Whoever made the other person feel guilty won. Whoever controlled the room won. I had spent too long losing a game I never agreed to play. That evening, Madison stayed mostly upstairs in the primary bedroom that used to be mine. I heard drawers opening and closing. Then silence. Then muffled crying. I did not go to her. There had been a time when I would have. I would have knocked off her tea, softened the moment, made her pain easier, even if she had helped create mine. But that version of me was tired. Grace stayed close. She sat with me in the kitchen while Diane made coffee strong enough to wake the dead. Eleanor had left after making copies of everything and reminding me not to discuss legal details without her present. Diane leaned against the counter and looked around my kitchen. She really moved everything she said. I followed her gaze. The mugs were in the wrong cabinet. The spices were in glass jars Madison had labeled in tiny gold letters. My old rooster cookie jar was gone. My recipe box had been pushed to the back of a pantry shelf. She said it looked cluttered, I said. Diane's mouth tightened. Your life is not clutter. Grace looked down at her hands. I helped her move some of it, she whispered. I touched her shoulder. You were doing what your mother told you. I still feel bad. Feeling bad means your heart is awake, Diane said. Just don't let guilt make you carry what belongs to grown people. Grace nodded, but I could tell she was still carrying too much. Around 7, Ryan came into the kitchen. He looked calmer. That worried me more than his anger. Ryan's rage was messy. His calm was strategy. "Mom," he said, "can we talk?" Diane folded her arms. Ryan glanced at her. "Privately." "No," I said. His jaw tightened. "You need your sister to speak for you. Now I need witnesses when you speak to me." That hit him. He looked at Grace, then softened his face. "Grace, honey, can you give us a minute?" Grace did not move. "No." Ryan blinked. It was a small rebellion. But in that kitchen, it sounded enormous. He forced a smile. "Sweetheart, adults need to discuss things." Grace's voice shook, but she held it steady. "You keep saying that when you want me not to hear the truth." Ryan's smile vanished. Diane took a sip of coffee. "I like this child." Ryan ignored her and turned back to me. "Mom, I've been thinking. Things got out of hand." I waited. He took a breath, performing sincerity like a man reading from a script. "I shouldn't have said what I said at dinner." Grace looked at him sharply. "I did too. Not because the apology moved me. Because it was the first time he had come close to admitting anything. But then, he ruined it." "But you have to admit," he continued, "you escalated everything." There it was, the hook hidden inside the apology. I nodded slowly. "You are not sorry you hurt me. You are sorry I reacted." Ryan's eyes hardened. "That's not fair." "No, what happened at that table was not fair." He stepped closer. "I was embarrassed, Mom. Madison was stressed. Guests were watching. You were standing there looking wounded, and I panicked. You panicked by sending me to my room. I made a mistake." "A mistake is forgetting salt in the potatoes. What you did was a choice." His face flushed. Diane set her mug down. Ryan looked at her. "Do you mind?" "Not at all," Diane said. "Keep talking. You're doing wonderfully badly." Grace almost smiled through her sadness. Ryan exhaled sharply. "Fine. I'll say it plainly. I need access restored to at least one card until this audit nonsense is finished." And there it was. Not love, not remorse. Access. I stared at my son, and the last little piece of hope I had been foolishly saving went quiet. "You came in here for a credit card." "I came in here because I have obligations. You have debts. I have a family. You had a mother, too." He looked away. For 1 second, silence filled the kitchen. Then Madison appeared in the doorway. Her face was pale, her makeup gone, her hair pulled back carelessly. She looked less like the polished woman who had ruled my dining room, and more like someone standing in the wreckage of her own choices. "Ryan," she said quietly, "stop." He turned. "Stay out of this." She laughed once, bitter and broken. "That is rich." Grace stiffened. Madison stepped into the kitchen. "I called my sister," she said. "Grace and I can stay with her for a few days." Ryan stared at her. "What?" "I need space." "Space," he snapped. "Now." "Yes, now. After finding out you had an apartment in Atlanta. After watching you threaten your mother. After realizing you were willing to make everyone think Courtney was losing her mind so you could get control." Ryan's face twisted. "You were part of that." Madison swallowed. "I was. And I will have to live with that." For the first time, I heard something in her voice that sounded close to truth. Not full repentance. Not yet. But fear had stripped away some of her arrogance. Ryan pointed at Grace. "You are not taking my daughter anywhere." Grace stood. "I want to go with Mom for tonight." Ryan looked at her like she had betrayed him again. "Grace, I can't stay here listening to you yell at Grandma. His mouth opened. No words came. Madison turned to me. Courtney, she said, and her voice cracked on my name. I know I have no right to ask you for anything, but may Grace come back here if she wants to? I looked at Grace. Always. Madison nodded, tears filling her eyes. I'm sorry, she whispered. The room went still. Ryan scoffed. Oh, please. Madison ignored him. She looked directly at me. I'm sorry for the room, for the table, for the apron, for making you feel like a guest in your own home. My throat tightened despite myself. I did not forgive her in that moment. Forgiveness is not a button you press because someone finally says the right words. But I heard her. That was all I could offer. I hope you mean that, I said. She nodded. I do. Ryan laughed harshly. This is unbelievable. Everyone is suddenly against me. Diane looked at him. No, Ryan. Everyone is suddenly tired. That sentence landed hard, because it was true. We were tired. Tired of managing his moods. Tired of protecting his image. Tired of paying for his mistakes. Tired of calling selfishness stress. Ryan looked around the kitchen and saw no one rushing to comfort him. Not Madison, not Grace, not me, not Diane. For the first time, he was alone with the consequences he had created. His face darkened. You'll all regret this. Then he turned and walked out. A few minutes later, we heard the front door slam. Grace flinched. Madison closed her eyes. I reached for my granddaughter's hand. He is angry, I said softly, but anger is not authority. Grace nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. Madison wiped her face. I'll pack a bag for us. She hesitated, then looked at me. I won't take anything that belongs to you. The fact that she had to say it told me how far we had fallen. Thank you, I said. After she left, Diane sat beside me at the kitchen table. You okay? I looked around, at the wrong cabinets, the missing cookie jar, the girl crying quietly beside me, the sister who had come when I called, the house that was still standing. No, I said, but I'm awake. Diane nodded. That's a start. Later that night, Madison and Grace left with 2 small bags. Grace hugged me so tightly I could feel her shaking. I'll call you, she whispered. I'll answer. When the door closed behind them, the house became quiet. For the first time in years, it was not the silence of being ignored. It was the silence after a storm. I walked upstairs to the primary bedroom, my old bedroom. The door was open. Madison had left it neat, almost untouched, except for the empty drawers and the faint scent of her perfume. I stood in the doorway for a long time. Then I walked inside. Thomas's side of the room was gone, but the light still fell across the floor the same way it used to in winter. I sat on the edge of the bed and let myself feel the weight of everything. I had not gotten my family back. Not yet. Maybe not ever in the way I once wanted. But I had gotten myself back. And downstairs, somewhere beyond the locked front door, Ryan was learning that a mother's love could be endless without being available for abuse. By morning, he would try one more desperate move. But this time, he would not find me alone. Ryan's final move came the next morning. I was in the kitchen with Diane when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. Then something in my stomach tightened, and I answered. Mrs. Palmer, a man asked. This is Officer Reynolds with the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department. We received a welfare concern regarding you. Diane looked up from her coffee. A welfare concern, I repeated. Yes, ma'am. A caller reported that you may be confused, distressed, and possibly being influenced by others in your home. For 1 second, the room went silent around me. Then I understood. Ryan. He could not control the cards. He could not control Grace. He could not control Madison. He could not control Eleanor. So he had reached for the oldest weapon left. Make me look unstable. I closed my eyes. Diane stood immediately. Courtney, I put the call on speaker. Officer? I said calmly, may I ask who made that report? I can't disclose that over the phone, ma'am. We'd like to stop by and make sure you're safe. I looked at Diane. She mouthed, call Eleanor. I understand, I said. My attorney will be present. There was a pause. That's fine, ma'am. After I hung up, Diane's face was hard. That boy called the police on you? He called them for himself, I said. Not for me. My hands were steady. That surprised me again. A month earlier, this would have shattered me. I would have called Ryan crying, begging him not to do this to our family. I would have tried to explain. I would have tried to prove I was not confused to the very person who wanted others to believe I was. But not that morning. That morning, I called Eleanor. She answered before the second ring. What happened? Ryan filed a welfare concern. Her silence was brief and sharp. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Do not speak to anyone alone. By the time the officers arrived, Eleanor was seated beside me at the kitchen table. Diane stood near the counter, and a folder of documents rested neatly in front of us. 2 officers came to the door. Officer Reynolds was a black man in his 50s, with kind eyes and a careful voice. His partner, Officer Miller, was younger, quiet, observant. I invited them in. Ryan arrived 5 minutes later. Of course he did. He pulled into the driveway fast and stepped out wearing the expression of a concerned son. Not angry now, not exposed, concerned. It was almost impressive. Almost. Mom, he said, walking into the foyer as if he had been invited. Thank God. I was worried. Diane made a sound under her breath. Eleanor stood. Mr. Palmer, you will not perform concern in my client's home. Ryan looked at the officers. See, this is what I mean. My mother is surrounded by people making decisions for her. Officer Reynolds looked at me. Mrs. Palmer, would you like to speak for yourself? I met his eyes. Yes, officer, I would. We sat in the living room, my living room, not Madison's showroom, not Ryan's stage, mine. Officer Reynolds asked simple questions first. My full name, my date of birth, the date, the current president, where I lived, whether I felt safe. I answered each one clearly. Ryan stood near the fireplace, arms crossed, jaw tight. Then Officer Reynolds asked, Do you feel anyone is pressuring you financially or emotionally? Ryan's eyes flicked to me. There it was, the moment he expected me to hesitate. I did not. Yes, I said. My son has been. Ryan exploded. That is ridiculous. Officer Miller turned toward him. Sir, please, let her speak. I continued. My son was an authorized user on several of my credit cards and business accounts. I revoked that access after discovering misuse of funds. Since then, he has accused me of being confused and unstable. My attorney has documentation. Eleanor opened the folder. Ryan's face went pale. Mom, don't do this. I looked at him. You already did. Eleanor handed copies to Officer Reynolds. Statements, emails, screenshots, the message about needing one public episode, the question about proving an elderly parent incapable, the charges, the apartment. Ryan's voice rose with each page the officer reviewed. This is a family matter. Officer Reynolds looked up. Financial exploitation concerns are not simply a family matter. Ryan froze. Those words changed the room. Financial exploitation. Not misunderstanding. Not drama. Not an emotional mother. A name. A real name. for what he had done. Officer Reynolds turned to me again. Mrs. Palmer, do you want him removed from the property today? Ryan's face twisted. Removed. This is my home. No, I said quietly. It is not. The officer looked at me. Is his name on the deed? No. Does he have a lease? No. Has he been asked to leave? Yes. Through my attorney. Eleanor added, formal notice is being prepared. Today we are asking that he leave the premises temporarily and stop entering private areas of the home without permission. Ryan shook his head. You can't kick me out the day after Christmas. Diane stepped forward. You kicked your mother out of Christmas dinner. Ryan glared at her. Officer Miller moved slightly between them. Sir, you need to calm down. Ryan looked around the room. At the officers, at Eleanor, at Diane, at me. For the first time, there was nowhere for him to place his performance where it would be believed. He tried one last time. Mom, he said softer now. Please, tell them this is a misunderstanding. I stared at him. My son, my only child, the boy I had carried, the man who had called strangers to question my mind because I had finally said no. And I realized love was still there. That was the cruel part. Love does not vanish just because someone hurts you, but love no longer had the steering wheel. No, Ryan, I said. It is not a misunderstanding. His eyes filled with something that almost looked like tears. Almost. Officer Reynolds gave him a choice. Leave voluntarily for the day or risk escalation if he refused to comply with the homeowner's request. Ryan chose the version that preserved the most pride. He left. But before he walked out, he turned to me. You're choosing them over your own son. I stood. No, I am choosing truth over fear. He had no answer. The door closed behind him. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then Officer Reynolds turned to me. Mrs. Palmer, I recommend you continue working with your attorney. You may also want to consider changing locks if legally appropriate. Eleanor nodded. Already planned. After they left, I sat down slowly. Diane came to my side. You held yourself together. I looked at the door. I had to, but when Grace called 20 minutes later, my strength nearly broke. Grandma, she whispered. Dad called the police. He called in a welfare concern. Her breath hitched. I'm so sorry. No, sweetheart. You did nothing wrong. Mom is crying. She says she didn't know he would go that far. I closed my eyes. Madison had known many things, but maybe even she had not known the bottom of Ryan's desperation. Are you safe? I asked. Yes. We're at Aunt Melissa's. Good. Grace was quiet for a moment. Then she said, Grandma, I don't want to be like him. My heart clenched. You won't be. How do you know? Because you are asking that question. She cried softly then. I stayed on the phone until her breathing steadied. That afternoon, a locksmith came. I watched him change the locks on the front door, the back door, the garage entry, and the side porch. Each click of the new lock felt like a sentence ending. Diane found my old recipe box in the pantry and placed it back on the kitchen counter. Then she went to the garage and came back carrying the paper angel ornament Ryan had made as a child. She held it out to me. You want this on the tree? I stared at it. For a moment, I saw the boy he had been, then the man he had become. Both truths hurt. Yes, I said, but not for Ryan. I took the ornament and hung it near the front of the tree. Not because everything was forgiven, because my memories belonged to me too. Ryan did not get to ruin the good years by weaponizing the bad ones. That evening, Eleanor called. The audit has already found enough irregularities to proceed formally, she said. I sat at the kitchen table, looking at the changed locks. What happens now? Now, she said, Ryan learns the difference between being loved and being allowed. I looked toward the Christmas tree. The silver decorations Madison had chosen still glittered, but the paper angel hung among them now, imperfect and stubborn. A small piece of the old house returning, a small piece of me. For the first time since Christmas dinner, I ate a full meal at my own table. Not in my room, not standing in the kitchen, at the table. And when I turned off the lights that night, I did not feel victorious. I felt free enough to grieve. And sometimes freedom begins exactly there. 3 months later, I sat at the head of my own dining table again. Not Thomas's chair, not Ryan's chair, mine. Spring sunlight came through the windows, soft and warm, touching the polished wood where Madison's cold white centerpiece had once sat. The silver decorations were gone. The gold napkin rings were gone. The perfect, lifeless version of my home was gone. My blue curtains were back. My rooster cookie jar sat on the counter. My recipe box was where it belonged. And on the mantel beside Thomas's photograph sat the little paper angel Ryan had made as a boy. I kept it there for a reason, not because I had forgotten what he did, because I refused to let the worst version of my son erase every memory that came before it. But things had changed. Ryan no longer lived in my house. Neither did Madison. The legal notice gave them time to move out, but Ryan left sooner after the audit began, uncovering more than he expected. Personal charges, false expense descriptions, reimbursements he had approved for himself, vendor payments that did not match real company needs. Eleanor handled it with the calm precision of a surgeon. I did not attend every meeting. I did not need to. For once, I let professionals protect what I had spent a lifetime building. Ryan was removed from all financial authority at Palmer Medical Supply. His employment was suspended pending repayment negotiations. Eleanor advised me not to discuss details with him directly, and I listened. That was new for me. Listening to someone who protected me instead of someone who used my love against me. Madison filed for separation. I heard that from Grace, not from Ryan. Madison had taken Grace to stay with her sister for several weeks, then found a small rental apartment nearby. It was not glamorous. It did not photograph beautifully. But Grace told me it was quiet. Quiet mattered. Madison called me once. I almost did not answer. When I did, she cried before she spoke. Courtney, she said, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I said nothing. She continued. I became someone I don't even recognize. I wanted the house, the image, the life, and I let Ryan convince me you were standing in the way of what we deserved. What did you deserve, Madison? I asked. She was silent for a long time. Then she whispered, not what we took. That was the first honest thing she had ever said to me. I did not invite her back into my life. Not fully. But I told her I hoped she would become the kind of mother Grace could trust. Sometimes that is all forgiveness can be at first. A door not opened, but not locked forever. Ryan was different. He called many times. At first angry, then pleading, then angry again. One voicemail said, "You destroyed my life." Another said, "Dad would be ashamed of you." That one almost broke me. I sat on the edge of my bed phone in my hand, staring at Thomas's watch. Then I heard Thomas's voice in my memory, steady as ever. If we protect him from shame, now life will humiliate him later. So, I deleted the message. Not because it did not hurt. Because pain is not always an instruction. Sometimes pain is just proof that a wound is real. Ryan finally agreed to repayment terms after Eleanor made it clear the alternative would be much worse. He did not apologize in the legal meeting. Not really. He said, "I regret how things happened." Eleanor looked at him and said, "That is not the same as regret for what you did." He looked away. I did not chase the apology. That was another new thing. For most of my life, I had chased emotional crumbs from people I fed with whole loaves. Not anymore. Grace came over every Saturday. At first, she was quiet in the house like she was afraid the walls still held shouting. We cooked together. We planted herbs on the porch. We put Thomas's old chair back in the living room after Diane helped me drag it out of the garage. Grace cried when she saw it. "I remember Grandpa sitting there," she said. "So do I." One Saturday, she brought a sketchbook. Inside were drawings of the house. Not Madison's version. Mine. The porch, the kitchen, the mantel, the dining table with 3 chairs pulled close together. One drawing showed me standing at the table, my hand on the back of the chair, sunlight around me. Under it, she had written, "She stayed." I had to turn away for a moment. Grace saw me wiping my eyes and hugged me. "You didn't just stay, Grandma," she whispered. "You came back." And maybe that was the truth. I had lived in that house for decades, but for a while, I had disappeared inside it. I had become quieter, smaller, easier to move around. Christmas night did not break me. It revealed how broken the arrangement had become. A month after everything settled, I hosted Sunday dinner. Just Diane, Grace, Eleanor, and 2 longtime employees from Palmer Medical Supply who had stood by me through the audit. I cooked the sweet potato casserole, the cranberry dressing, roasted chicken, green beans with almonds, cornbread in Thomas's old cast-iron skillet. No one wore an apron unless they wanted to. No one was sent upstairs. Before we ate, Grace stood beside the table holding a small folded paper. "I wrote something," she said shyly. Diane winked at me. Grace unfolded the paper and read, "To my grandmother, who taught me that kindness is not weakness, silence is not peace, and love should never require you to disappear." By the time she finished, every woman at that table was crying. Even Eleanor, though she denied it and blamed allergies. I looked around the table. There were empty seats. Yes, Ryan's seat was empty. Madison's seat was empty. Thomas's seat would always be empty in one way. But the room did not feel empty. It felt honest. And honest is better than full when full means pretending. Later that evening, after everyone left, I washed the dishes slowly. Not because I had to. Grace offered to help. Diane offered to help. Eleanor even offered, which made me laugh, because I could not imagine that woman holding a dish towel. But I wanted a moment alone in my kitchen. My kitchen. The window above the sink reflected my face back at me. 68 years old. Lines around my mouth. Silver in my hair. Eyes that had cried too much and finally learned to see clearly. For the first time in years, I did not look invisible to myself. I dried my hands, walked into the dining room, and stood beside the table. I thought about Christmas night, the casserole in my hands, the missing chair. Ryan's voice. "Why don't you eat in your room tonight?" Then I thought about the laptop, the cards, the folder, Grace's envelope, Eleanor at the door. The locks changing. The first meal I ate at my own table again, and I understood something I wish I had understood sooner. Sometimes the moment someone tries hardest to humiliate you becomes the moment you finally stop abandoning yourself. Ryan wanted me out of sight. Instead, he made me see. I still loved my son. I may always love him, but I no longer confuse love with access. I no longer confuse motherhood with surrender. And I no longer believe keeping a family together means letting one person quietly destroy everyone else. That Christmas, my son told me to eat in my room, so I canceled his credit cards. But what I really canceled was the agreement I had made with disrespect. The agreement to stay quiet. The agreement to be grateful for crumbs. The agreement to disappear in a house I built with my own hands. And once that agreement ended, my life began again. If there is one lesson I learned from all of this, it is that love without boundaries can become a doorway for people who do not respect you. Sometimes the people we sacrifice for the most are the same people who begin to believe our sacrifice is their right. A mother's love is powerful. A grandmother's love is tender. But no love should require you to become invisible. No family table is worth sitting at if the price of your seat is your dignity. And no child, no matter how much you love them, has the right to turn your kindness into a weapon against you. For years, I thought keeping peace meant staying quiet. I thought if I endured enough, gave enough, forgave enough, my family would remember my heart. But peace built on disrespect is not peace. It is fear wearing a soft voice. The hardest truth is, this setting boundaries may hurt people who benefited from you having none. They may call you cruel. They may call you selfish. They may say you changed. But sometimes, changing is exactly what saves you. If this story touched your heart, tell me in the comments, what would you have done if you were in Courtney's place? Have you ever had to choose your dignity over keeping the peace in your family? Please like this video, subscribe for more emotional family stories, and comment where you're watching from and what time it is there. I read every comment, and your story may help someone else feel less alone.